Hey guys, you are watching your anime world. How are you all? Please support to subscribe this channel for watching new interesting stories. So in this video, we will see second part, what if Deku became the all-powerful Omni Hero. Here is short summary. His goal in life was to be a hero, and along with the gifts that he has gained, he will be one. But before we start, if you want more stuff like this, then be sure to subscribe and like this video. And if possible, share this video with your friends. Now let's start the story. Izuku was the only one that raided his hand, and All Might pointed at him. They did not work as a team as they should have, Izuku said. Well done, Izuku. Now who you lot think is the man or woman of the match? All Might asked them all. Everyone looked at each other, and then Gwen raised her hand. Yes, Miss Tennyson, All Might asked. After everything Izuku had said, I think that Shoji gets it, she said as All Might nodded his head. Yes, Miss Tennyson, because when you are put in a team, you must use everything that is at your disposal, and each man and or woman must work together, All Might said to her. Everyone nodded their heads as he pressed a button on the console as it picked two more teams. Hero team is Team F, and the villain team is Team J, All Might told them all. As both teams walked out and headed to their building, Gwen turned to Izuku. Who do you think will win? She asked him. I think that Team F will lose this one, he told her as they could see that the villain team had entered the building. Why'd you say that? Cuz? Gwen asked him. Minetta's quirk pop-off is difficult to deal with, Izuku said as he watched Minoru take the ball off his head and place them on the ground, and they stick there. Tenya walked up to them and asked, what do you mean, Midoriya? A quirk like his can stop a lot of people, and it has the potential to be a good capture hero, Izuku told him. As they watch the screen, they see Eijiro standing in the hallway leading to the bomb, and with Kirishima as a backup for if they get thou adds another threat to this mission, Tenya said as both Izuku and Gwen nodded their heads. Hero team, you may enter, All Might said into a microphone. It begins, Izuku said as they saw Koji and Rikido enter the building. Rikido downed a lot of sugar and started running down the halls. I'm possessive that his plan is not going to work, Momo said as she watched the screen. I don't think it was part of their plan, Tenya said as they could see that Rikido was running around aimlessly. And this soon they ran into the hallway full of the purple balls and got stuck in the hallway. Villain team wins, All Might called out. Now that was a truly short match, Izuku said as he shook his head. It's how it is, isn't it? Gwen said as the four of them started to make their way back to the observation room. Once they were back in the observation room, they stood next to All Might. Now and with both of the previous times, can anyone tell me where Team F went wrong? He asked them all. Denki held up his hand, and before the others could raise their hands, All Might picked him. They did not have a plan when they entered the building, he said. Nice and well done for pointing that out, Toshinori said as he nodded his head. Now, can anyone tell me what Team J did wrong? He asked them. Honda raised his hand this time, and Toshinori pointed at him. I don't think that Team J did anything wrong, he said as All Might nodded his head. That is right, young Zero, as young Mineta made the trap and young Kirishima was there as a backup if they managed to get past the hallway, All Might said as Team J was relieved that they did nothing wrong. Now, can anyone who is the man of the match? All Might asked them all. Tenya's hand shot up as All Might pointed at him. I think that the man of the match would be the person that gave the victory for Team J, and that would be Mineta, Ida said, waving his hands around like a robot. All Might nodded his head but looked at Tenya a bit oddly before speaking. What you have said, young Ida, is true. He turned to Mineta. Well done, young Mineta, he said to the small boy. As they walked back, Toshinori pressed a button that the computer spat out two more teams. Hero team is Team G, and the villain team is Team C, All Might told them all. After Team C got into their building, Izuku watched as Momo pulled beams out of her stomach and built a barricade at the door where they placed the bomb, as well as the other doors, and trapped the hallway. They have a good plan, Ochako said as she watched them build the traps. Yay, Gwen agreed with her. Hero team, you may enter, All Might called out. They watched as Kyoka stuck one of her jacks into the wall. There's nothing and no one on this floor, she told Kaminari. Right, let's move to the next floor, he told her. They are handling this good so far, Izuku said as he watched the two of them move out the building. As they did this over and over until they reached the hall that was full of traps and barricaded doors. You've got to be kidding me, Denki said as they saw him look at each of the doors. And now they have hit a brick wall, Gwen said as Kyoka tried to make her way to a wall. Just as she was going to place her hand on the Kaminari's arm shot out to grab her arm. And he seemed to grab her in time as something hit the light showing that there was a wire on the wall only a few meters from her hands. All Might I think that no matter what Team G does, they will not get those their quirks are not built for battle, Izuku said as he shook his head. I think so too so, villain team wins, All Might be saying be yelling into the microphone. When both teams had returned, All Might started by saying, now this pairing of teams was not a good now to show off their prowess, but I was impressed by the teamwork from both teams. Everyone nodded their heads at that as the computer picked the following teams, Hero Team as Team E, and the Villain Team as Team N, All Might called out to them. Izuku watched as Team N was just waiting in the room with the bomb while both Mina and Yuga was waiting to be told that they could go in. I think that this may be our second tie, Izuku said to Ochako. Why is that? She asked him. Ashido's quirk is acid, meaning that with Todoroki's frost flame would melt and Kendo can force them into close combat while Aoyama will put them into ranged combat once more, Izuku said as Gwen and Momo nodded their heads. Hero Team, you may enter, All Might called out. And it played out just as Izuku said it would as they had a tie and was going to be one until. Now that's impressive, Izuku said. I would have never have thought to do that, Momo called out. I know. I mean, who would do that? Gwen asked her. I know I wouldn't think to do that, Ochako said as she looked surprised. Fuyumi had jet out a wave of lames that had frozen them to the floor as Itsuka moved in to get ready to knock them out. Villain Team wins, All Might called out once more. As the four made their way back, Izuku looked shocked at the outcome. That was a truly impressive match, Izuku said. Tenya turned to him and nodded and said, it was a good twist with using her fire ice to capture them. Shoto, hearing this, that's a good hero name, he thought. Yay, I know what you mean, Gwen added as the four walked in. Can anyone tell me what Team E did wrong? All Might asked the class. The entire class was silent as a grave, and both teams got the picture. No one, he asked as he looked around and seeing that no one was going to speak. They did not give themselves enough room to fight at range with young Aoyama. They would have pushed them back, he told them. Aoyama had a massive twinkle in his eye after he said, now, can anyone tell me what Team N did wrong? He asked them. Once more, they did not know, so Izuku put his hand up. Yes, young Midoriya, All Might asked him. They stayed together without moving from where they were stationed, he said. That is true. But they also made the same mistake as Team E, he told them. Now, can anyone who is the man or woman of the match? All Might asked them all. Shoto held up his, and All Might pointed at him. My sister, for the wave of fire ice that gave them the win, he said as All Might nodded his head. Next two teams are, All Might said as the four teams were waiting to see if they could take their turn. And so the computer spat out, Hero Team as Team K, and the Villain Team as Team L, All Might called out to them. Both teams walked out and made their way to the building. So I have to play the villain then, Konako thought as she hid a small smile. That is going to be easy, her thoughts continued. After a few minutes, they reached it, and as Team L walked into the building, Izuku watched as Konako was sending out waves of ash from her hands that floated in the air around the first two floors. This is going to be fun to watch, Izuku said as All Might called out. Hero Team, you may enter. Gwen walked up to the door. Chiwat Lagara, Gwen called out as she sent out a blast of wind from her hand that sent all the ash out of her way. Hamiko took one of her tiny red balls as her body changed and became thinner as golden fur started to grow on her that had black spots on them. Gwen held out both her hands as a small ball of wind formed in front of her hands as it started to spin faster and faster before. Chiwat Lagara Maxima, she yelled out as the ball of wind turned into a blast of wind. Once Gwen said the word Maxima, Katsuki looked straight at the screen. Wait a minute, did she just say Maxima like the Harry Potter magical modifier that makes a spell reach its maximum strength, she thought. The wind moved thou the building, moving all the ash out the way. Himiko started running thou the building as her body got more cat-like as her body changed to that of a cheetah. Think Wonder Woman 1984 cheetah. So that's her quirk. She can take some blood in and change her from to fit the blood, Izuku thought as he watched Gwen run after her. Is she's quirkless, how can she all that? Katsuki asked, confused. Konako sent out a blast of ash that set ablaze and started to move it thou the hall at the other two. She uses mana, or otherwise known as the life force of all things, Izuku told her as Himiko running thou a hallway and under the cone of flames that Konako had sent her way. As Himiko jumped over Konako and Hitoshi, Gwen drew a slanted S in the air, Aguamenti, she called out as a blast of water shot out of her finger that doused flames and soaked Konako and Hitoshi. Next to Izuku, he could hear a loud squeal that pierced the air next to him. He turned to see that his best friend was fangirling, and he had no clue as of why. Then he remembered that she was a massive Harry Potter fangear. Oh sweet God, Izuku thought as he looked at her, and he knew the next spell that Gwen was going to use. Please, for all that is holy in this world, do not use that spell, please, he begged in thought. But sadly, his prayers was not answered as Gwen drew a U in the air along with a squiggle as she yelled out, glacius, as from her finger, all the water on Konako and Hitoshi turned to ice. The occupants of the observation room was met with another squeal courtesy of Bakugo. Gwen came running into the room to the bomb as Hitoshi opened his mouth. Hey ginger magician girl, he yelled at Gwen. She turned to him with a dark look in her eyes. What you call, she was saying before her eyes glazed over, and Hitoshi smiled. Get us out of the ice, he told her. Gwen nodded her head. Liqueface it, she called out before breathing out a bit of smoke from her mouth that melted the ice, but sadly for Team L. Himiko just walked over to the bomb and placed a hand on it. Hero team wins, All Might called out. Izuku turned to Katsuki to see that she had a calm smile on her face. Kachin, are you okay? Izuku asked her as she turned to him. The look that he got even made his lion spirit frightened. Yay, I'm good, she said to him with a smile on her face. After a few minutes of waiting, the two teams walked back in, and Gwen was freaked out at the smile that Katsuki was sending her, but All Might called out, well done to both teams, but no, can anyone tell me what Team L did wrong? Only two hands shot up at that one, Izuku and Fuyumi. So All Might picked the Todoroki. They had a good plan, but if they had Shinso near the bottom floor, he could have controlled Tennyson a lot sooner and possibly give them the win, she told him, and Toshinori nodded his head at that. Well done, Miss Todoroki, he told her before looking back over the class. Now, can anyone tell me what Team K did wrong? All Might asked as only Izuku's hand was up this time. So his mentor picked him. Gwen thought that she had captured them with her ice spell, Izuku told him as Toshinori nodded his head at that. That is true, young Midoriya, and can anyone tell me who the man or woman of the match is? All Might asked them all. Izuku was once more the only one to put his hand up and was picked once more. I think that Toga would be the woman of the match, as when Heizono made the trap, she used her wit to move out the building fast while having Gwen as support, fire and aid, he told his mentor. Himiko was shocked before covering it up fast. Someone thought that I did something good and it was not to do with killing, she thought, and she could feel something inside her begin to fill up. I hear what you're saying, but you forgot that Heizono made the trap that almost caught them and was holding off Miss Tennyson, All Might said as Kanako also gained a look of shock before she rid of it fast before anyone could notice. And she started to feel the same as Himiko. Is villainy really all it is? They both thought before they banished the thought. No, I am a villain. They can never accept me, they both said in their heads. But what they did not know was this was the first of many cracks that would form in their heads that would break their will to commit any crime or take any life from anyone if they did not deserve it. The chains that had been wrapped around their inner light by one for all had begun to loosen, and the goodness that they had buried deep within themselves was returning to the surface. They began to think that the strength of all for one is not all that great, and they began to think that maybe they could be heroes and improviser the next generation and beyond. But like I had said, it was only the first of many, so let's continue, shall we? So for this match, we will have women of the game as both Miss Toga and Miss Heizono has earned it, All Might said as both girls came back to earth. And so, with the needing to be told, the last two teams walked out. So we have a frog and bird versus a bat and an archer, Tenya muttered as he looked at the two teams make their way to the building where they would be working in. Izuku looked at his mentor and could see that he was fighting to stay in his bulk form, and then he did the math in his head, so when the last teams are done with we'll only have enough time to sum up what had happened today before he would have to run and hide, Izuku thought. Toshinori caught his eye and nodded his head. It seems that he has caught on, he thought. The teams seemed to reach the building as once the villain team, Team M, entered the building, they seemingly disappeared. And one of them is wearing pink. After looking over the cameras, they could not find them anywhere, so All Might called out, "Hero Team, you may enter." And so both Fumikage and Tsuyu made their way in not long before an arrow embedded itself in the floor in front of Tsuyu along with a bat-like shuriken, the Dark Knight Batarang. So both of them are going to be stealth or night heroes, Izuku summarized as Gwen nodded her head. Dark Shadow, Fumikage called out as a bird-like creature shot out of his midsection. Da beep, Bakugo asked as she looked at the creature. Fun Zuu Hin Mystica, Gwen called out as she waved her hand over the screen. Both Fumikage and Tsuyu jump out the way of another arrow that was heading their way. What you got, cuz? Izuku asked her as he watched the battle. That creature is a creature of darkness and is Fumikage's quirk, she told Izuku. And so the villain team for the rest of the time, the hero team did not make it to the bomb, and so All Might called out, "Villain team wins." And once the team was back in, Toshinori asked, "Can anyone tell me what Team H, hero team, did wrong?" Momo was the only one to hold up their hand, and so All Might picked her. They did not push that when they could have just gone around both of them and then headed for the bomb, she told him. That is true now. Can anyone tell me what Team M did wrong? Toshinori asked them but found the room did not move to raise a hand or anything as they did not know. I see then you are in the same boat as me as I did not know what they did, he told them all. So I think that Team M are the women of the match, he told them as they all nodded their heads. Feeling the time life to only seconds, he turned to the class and said, "No, head back to your homeroom for your next lesson," he told them as he pressed a button on the console as the doors began to open. "Now let me show you how a hero exits so that it looks like you have a place to be," he told them before booking it out of the room at his top speed. U.A. Academy, Class 1A homeroom, a few minutes later. Everyone was back in the classroom in their uniforms and putting their briefcases back into the wall sections. So what's the next class? Konako asked as she looked around at the others. I think it was called Basic Plumber Training, Momo told her. Both Izuku's and Gwen's eyes shot open at that. They turned to each other and said at the same time, the only officer on world that teaches plumber basic training is. They were cut off as a blue monkey with 4 arms walked into the room. They wore white armor and had a belt like Izuku's. Dungik, they finished as they looked at the monkey. The identified Dungik turned and yelled out, Cadet Midoriya, Cadet Tennyson front and center. Both Izuku and Gwen seemed to teleport to the front of the class and stood straight like they were in the army, and this was their general. And he was. This is Dungik Arachnichimp, agent of the plumbers and the one that was in charge of the training of all cadets from the planet Earth. You both are back in my tender care, so not hot dogging am I understood? Dungik asked them. Sir, yes sir, both of them called out. Good now, all of you follow me, and with that said, he walked with Izuku and Gwen not far behind him as the rest of the class joined them. U.A. Academy, Ground Zada, Building Q. Class 1A walked into a large building in A.Q. shape and kept following the Arachnichimp. Hey Deku, is this guy an alien? Katsuki asked the lion spirit user. Yay, he's what's called an Arachnichimp from the planet Aranicimia that is in the Milky Way, he told her. Let's not forget that he is also the one in charge of training the plumbers that came from Earth, Gwen said as she joined the conversation. As Class 1A looked at the scared forms of Izuku and Gwen in shock as they all thought, what could scare them, before they came up to a steel door. Next to the door was a keypad, and as Dungik put in, the door opened with a hiss. When they walked into the room, they found that there were 28 tables each that was each number. Now go to the table that has your seat number on it, Dungik told them as he stood in front of them. As each of them walked over to their table, they found parts all over the table. Wait a second, aren't there? Izuku thought. I knew it, Gwen thought as she looked at the parts all over the table. Today, you are going to put together these blasters, Dungik told them all. The only ones that looked ready were Izuku and Gwen, as they knew how to assemble one as from when their grandfather had taught them. Well, there, grandfather and Dungik. Begin, the Arachnochimp called out. And so the class started to put them together, and they clicked into place. It was lucky for them that there were instructions on the table and the blaster pieces. Izuku and Gwen were flying ahead of the rest of the class as they put the blaster together, and once they were done, they placed it on their table. After a few more minutes, the rest finished. Dungik walked over to each of them. He first walked up to Yuga. Now let's see here, he told the boy as he inspected the blaster. Everything was looking good for him until he moved one of his hands to the barrel, and the stock had fallen off. Good try there, my boy, Dungik said as he patted him on the shoulder. You get a pass, he told him. Where did I go wrong? Yuga asked him as he picked the stock off the floor. Dungik pointed at the part that the barrel was in too. You placed this in backwards, he told him. Yuga nodded his head as he got to work finding his mistake. Why was those two frightened of this guy? Katsuki thought as she looked at the care that was shown to Yuga. He then walked over to Mina, and as he picked it up, it all fell apart. Fail, and I can see that you did not even look at the instructions that we gave you, Dungik told her. But sir, I did follow them, she told him as she looked shocked. Please, I know that is a lie as I saw you were only putting it together on the bench as did some others that are here and the instruction told you to hold it in your hands to make sure that you put it together right. He yelled at her as she looked at the instructions only to see that it did say hold it in your hands when putting it together. Now I see why, Katsuki thought as she looked at the frightened look on Mina's face. Suyu's blaster was the next to be looked over, and as he looked it over, he found nothing wrong as it did not fall apart in his hands. Well done, you pass, he told the frog girl. Thank you, Ribbit, she said as she was as stoic as ever. When he walked over to Tenya's, it was the same as Suyu's, so he passed him along with Ochako when he got to her. And so he moved down to each student, some getting passes and others getting fails until he reached Izuku. Cadet Midoriya, do you think that you got it right his time? The Arachnochimp asked as the Omnitrix Wilder stood straight. I think so, sir, Izuku said as Dungik looked over the blaster. Well done this time Cadet Midoriya, he told the boy, who let out a sigh of relief as the Arachnochimp walked up to Katsuki. Now let's have a look-see, Dungik said as he picked up her blaster, and everything was looking good for her until he put it back down. Then the barrel fell off. Dungik looked at her, but her eyes were on the barrel that had the nerve to come out, so her hands started smoking. She still got a pass as he moved on to the others and handed out more passes and fails until he reached Gwen. And he was happy as she got it right. So she got a pass as well. Some more plumbers walked in hand fixed the mistakes that were made on the one that failed as targets came down from the ceiling. Now, you all will be doing target practice, the plumber agent told them as he pointed at Gwen. You're first, he told her. And so, for the rest of the lesson, they fired at targets and was critiqued for doing the minor things that they did wrong or praised for all that they were doing right. A Academy, student dorms. As the class made their way back to their rooms, Katsuki stayed with Izuku as he opened the door to his apartment. Hey Deku, can I come in? She asked him as he turned to her. Izuku nodded his head. As he allowed her to come in, she made sure to sway her hips. They both walked into his living room to find some furniture there. There was a massive, U-shaped forest green and black sofa. Type into Google Images super modern style living room sofa furniture LED lamps top quality leather couch sofa and look at the red and black one but replace the red with forest green. Another sofa but this time it was a 3-person one that looked like the U-1 and 2 armchairs with one being a 1-person chair while the other being a 2-person chair, 1+2+3 seats genuine leather furniture living room sofa sets on AliExpress same flower scheme as the other sofa. So when did you get the furniture? She asked as she took a seat on the large sofa. My mother installed while we were in class, he told her as he walked to the kitchen. It looks cool, she said as she looked at the room and formed a plan in her head. Now the only thing I need is to bring out the animal in him, she thought. Izuku came back with 2 glasses of water. He handed it to her and sat down in the armchair. She moved to sit on a massive sofa and took a drink of water. So we are all space cops now, she asked him. Izuku looked her in the eye and said, "Yay, it looks like it." He then leant back into the chair. They both sat in silence for a bit before Katsuki spoke up. "I meant what I said in class today," she told him. He turned to her and asked, "That you would be my queen?" "Yay that," she said as she got up and walked over to his chair and straddled him. "And I mean it, someday you will be king of all the heroes, and I will stand next to you as your queen," she told him as she leaned in. Izuku would generally try to get her off him, but the lion within him told him to dominate her. And so he did, as when their lips met, they were in a straight-tongue war with Katsuki grinding her waist on him. While there were beeping, they fought to take each other's clothes off. Izuku moved the zip down her skirt as she removed his shirt, showing that he had a 6-pack. Izuku then moved to unbutton her shirt to show off her bra. It was a yellow lace that had badgers all over them. Izuku broke off and looked her in the eye and asked, "I thought that you were a Slytherin." "Nope," she said as she took her shot off and unclipped her bra. "I'm as brave as a Gryffindor, as loyal as a Hufflepuff, as wise as a Ravenclaw and as cunning Slytherin," she told him as she took off her bra and showing him her F-size beeps. Izuku leant in as he latched himself to her beep, and she started to let out a loud beep as one hand went to her other beep, and his other hand was placed on her ass. As he gripped the beep and squeezed it, and he bit down on her nipple as she let out a squeal. He then moved his mouth onto the other beep and moved his other hand to her ass, and squeezed her ass while he slipped his fingers into her ass. She let out a small whimper before she leaned over to whisper in his ear and say, "Now that is not the only hole that you can fill." When he pulled back, she started to trail beeps down him, starting from his chin and going down his chest until she slid off the chair and unzipped his pants after seeing that he had a tent in his pants. She pulled out his dick to see that it was about 6 inches, and she looked pleased with what she was feeling and what she was looking at it. She started to lick Izuku's dick like a popsicle before taking him in her mouth and started to beep him off. Izuku started running his hands through her hair as she went for her treat. He was beeping as he bucked his hips before Katsuki took to the base with her mouth while looking him deep in the eye. He soon could feel that he was on the edge as he came. Katsuki pulled her mouth back as she could feel that he had filled her mouth with his seed. She got up and let her skirt fall to the floor, as did his pants and boxers, and before she could move, Izuku got up and pulled her into another beep as he walked them over to the large sofa. And did the same she did to him and started to beep her on her neck before moving down her body, trailing beeps. He relatched himself to her beep while pinching the other nipple before changing and doing to do the exact same to the other beep. Then he started to move down, and to the navel and then to her soaked panties like her bra, yellow lace with badgers. He peeled them away from her and down her leg. She fell back into the chair and opened her legs for him. He leant in and started to lick her dripping wet lower lips. Katsuki grabbed his head and tried to force him to go deeper. "Beep, that's it, my king," she purred as she could feel that he was going for gold. "Why am I only doing this now?" she thought as he hit her G-spot. He took his tongue out the way and moved 2 of his fingers in as he started to pump them in and out of her, and after a few seconds, he added another finger as there was now 3 fingers. "I know that it isn't that he was powerless," she thought as he had got her once more where she wanted to hit. Oh God, yes, right there," she told him as she could feel that she was on edge. "I guess what the hag was saying is true. I love him," she thought as she could feel that she was close. He then moved then and started to eat her out once more with his fingers and started to nibble on her clit. Oh kya, she squealed as her eyes rolled back and her body shook as she sprayed Izuku's face and hands in her cum. Izuku licked some of her cum off his face, moved to get closer to her. He moved his hand up her mouth as she tasted her cum off his fingers. Knowing that there was no turning back after this, so he looked her deep in the eye. Red meeting green, she gave a nod, and he started to push his dick into her. He began to stretch her as he went deeper until he hit a wall that was stopping him go anywhere. It was a hymen. He was about to take her BPT while she took his. And so he pushed in, and he could see that she had tears in her eyes, so he wiped them away. She looked at him in shock as she thought he would be like hammering into her, but he was waiting for her. Now she did know that he loved her. And after a few seconds, he started to move slowly. Katsuki started to feel pleasure from him and called out, "Faster," she told him. And he did as was told as he started to pick up the pace. He leant in and got into another tongue war with Katsuki. He then picked her up and carried her over to his bedroom. He had an Alaskan king-sized bed with a wavy shape of a green flow from under it. Corvus faux leather upholstered bed frame with underbed LED lights, black. The bed covers were light green with a floral pattern on them. He laid her down on the bed and continued to drill into her. "HHH harder," she called out to him. And he did so, and as he went harder and tried to get deeper into her as she wrapped her legs around his waist. She then rolled him around and started to bone on him like he was a pogo stick. "I don't think that I can last much longer," the Shishi-ken user thought as he could feel that he was close to release. "I'm so close, my king," she told him as she slammed down on him before her body shook as Izuku could see that the base of his dick was soaked with her cum. That sent him over the edge as he shot his sperm right into her womb. She then leant in to go for a beep but slapped him instead. "Tell me when you're about to burst," she told him as he looked shocked. "You're lucky that this is a safe day for me or else you would need to take responsibility for what you would have done," she growled at him. Izuku's eyes widened in shock as he realized at what he had done before his eyes returned to normal and full of love. "You know me since we were little, and you know that if you had a new life growing within you after today," Izuku said as he placed a hand on her stomach, "I would do everything in my power to take care of both you and our child," he told her. She tried to keep an angry face but it failed as she could feel that a blush was growing on her face. "Don't say anything like that," she muttered as she tried to look at him. "Why? Because you know that it's true," he told her as his hands moved to her waist. Katsuki could see the love in his eyes, and it was showing her love that she could practically feel for her. "Fine," she whispered as she started bouncing on his dick once more, but this time she was moving a daydream while doing it. In her daydream, Izuku came home in his hero costume with her in a kitchen cooking dinner alongside Inko as children ran at Izuku. There was 3 of them. The first was a girl with her hair color and green eyes. The second was a boy with green hair and red eyes. The last was a girl with a mix of ash blonde and green hair, with her right eye being red while her left one being green. And with that dream in mind, her mind started to add other girls. Ochako was washing clothes as a little girl with green hair and brown eyes, following her around and helping her. Mei, who was watching TV with 3 children, all of them had pink hair and green eyes. Mina was setting up the table for dinner as a boy with pink skin and green eyes and hair played with a truck. Suyu came in with a towel around his shoulders, dressed in a green one-piece swimsuit. Following up behind her was a little girl that had a tadpole tail, green hair and black eyes. Kyoko was playing a guitar as a little boy with dark purple hair and green eyes were playing on the drums while a little girl was singing along with them playing. A dress walked in as it seemed to be Toru as child-size clothes followed her. Momo was on the phone as she talked to the person on the other end about something as in her arm was a boy with green hair and onyx eyes. The dream moved to a gym with Itsuka punching on a punching bag as little boys joined her. One had green hair and teal eyes while the other had orange hair and green eyes. The dream moved to an office with Fuyumi sitting at a desk filling out papers behind her as a little boy with white hair, green streaks, and turquoise and green eyes. The dream moved back to a workshop that Melissa was working in that had an elderly butler take care of a little girl with blonde hair and green eyes. The dream showed that Konako was in a library with a little girl with green hair and gray eyes reading a book next to her. Then the dream moved to Himiko, who was shopping with a little boy with green hair with golden eyes. Each of the boys had Izuku's looks while the girls took their mother's looks. She returned to the lovemaking before getting off him and crawled onto the bed as she waved her ass. "You have another hole to fill," she told him. Izuku crawled on after her and looked as Katsuki used her hands to spread to ass cheeks to give him an easy way in. As he got ready to insert his dick into her ass, he could his lion spirit guide him. Feeling the animal within, he rammed his dick in her ass with a fierce growl. She let out a loud beep as she felt that her lover was destroying her ass. And she was enjoying it. As they continued, she let out a high-pitched squeal as she came soaking the sheets of Izuku's bed. Izuku pulled out of her ass as her body shook from the orgasm that she was having. But the lion within him wanted to breed her, and with the human part of him knowing that they are having safe beep. Just as Katsuki came down from her pleasure high, she felt Izuku sheath his dick in her once more. Was she shocked? Yes. Did she mind? Number. And I now back in heaven, she thought as she was over the moon in ecstasy. And as he started to hammer into her, she returned to her beeping as she could feel that this was what she wanted. That's right, my king, she called out to him. He gave no words, but he grunted as he latched his mouth to her neck and started to beep, bite and beep. They both knew what was going to be there in the morning. And neither of them cared as they were in the haze of lust for each other. And so they continued into the night as their lovemaking was eliminated by the moon that shone into the room. The shadows showed not humans but animals. Both were feline, but one had a large mane. The next day, UA Academy, Class 1A homeroom. Everyone was in their seats as they waited for their teacher to come in, so they talked. So, how are you going to help with my costume? Ochako asked Izuku as he drew her costume in a notebook. Well, I'm going to add things to your arms and legs to start with, he told her. My arms and legs? She asked as she looked at the drawing. Yay, he said as he pointed at the drawing. I am making things that will form over or will be added to your arms or leg, he told her. Oh, that sounds epic, she said as she thought about things that could help her as a rescue hero. What are they going to be? She asked him. Well, you have a space theme, so I was thinking some along that line, he told her as he drew what seemed to be a rocket booster. These modules will all have the theme of going thou space or something like that, he told her. He then turned the page so that she could see that he had drawn something that looked like a rocket with buttons, V-Mode Brace or Battle Booster from QQ Sentai Go-Go 5 or Power Rangers Lightspeed Rescue. This is going to help transport your modules to you, Izuku said as he then gained a thoughtful look on his face, and maybe some other things, he muttered and thought over. Seeing that he was muttering up a storm to himself, she turned to Katsuki, who was daydreaming. Does he do this often? Ochako asked her. Being awake from her daydream, she turned to Izuku, muttering to himself. Yay, and when he gets like this, you have one of two options, Katsuki said as she looked at the brown-haired girl. What are they? She asked. Well, option 1 is waiting it out and let him come to an end on his own, Katsuki told her as she could see that Izuku was writing so fast that smoke was coming off his pencil. No, that would be okay if it was the end of the day, she said. Oh, Ochako said as she really did not know what to do. Then there is option 2 as you force him out of it by force, Gwen spoke up. Katsuki nodded, so she got up carefully and walked up to Izuku and slapped him upside the head. Izuku started to look around to see that Katsuki, Gwen and Ochako was. Thank you, Izuku told Katsuki. That was new, Bakugo thought as she returned to her seat and sat down gently. My asin may be saying that they are in pain, but I love all that Deku, and I did last night, she though. And so she returned to having a daydream filled to the brim with her and Izuku doing the beepy dance with no pants. The door opened, and they turned to see Kaminari as the person who had opened the door. You okay, bro? Kirishima asked him. Yay, just the press was trying to interview All Might, he told him as he went to his seat. Is he down there now? Mina asked him. No, but Aizawa-sensei was, and he told me to get here before him so that I am not marked as late, Denki told them all. That's fair, Izuku said before a loud bang rang through the building, and I think that they must have triggered the protective gate, he continued. They all then returned to speaking to one another before Aizawa walked in, and as he did, each of the students returned to their seats. 3 seconds, you're getting better, he told them as he walked over to his podium. Now I looked over all of your performance yesterday, and I have some points to hand out to each of you, he told them all as looked at the paper in his hands. First match was between Midoriya and Uraraka, who was going against Bakugo and Ida, Aizawa said before looking at each of them. First, Ida, While you did well with removing anything that Uraraka could use against you but need not to get distracted so easily, Shota told him as he nodded his head. Now Bakugo, do not, and I mean do not use those gauntlets against you, classmates, ever again, he told her with his hair raising up and his eyes glowing red, and never leave your teammate alone and go without a plan, he told her, who just turned to look out the window. He then turned to Ochako. Now Uraraka, you and Midoriya knew that Bakugo would go after him, so you went ahead, and with some weapons from Midoriya, you tried to capture Ida. He looked at her as her if what he said was right. Yes, sir, she told him. And you did a splendid job, but you must always find a way to capture them, and as I looked over the footage, you just did it aimlessly until Midoriya came and backed you up, the underground hero told her. Midoriya, now I know that you want to catch up with the others, but you have that watch, so use it when needed, he told the green-haired boy. Now on to the next match between Boy Todoroki and Shoji versus Hagakure and Ojiro, he said, and so he then went on and over each student and said what they did wrong and how they could fix it. Now that's out of, we are going to do something fun that I forgot to do yesterday, he told them all and paused for dramatic effect. It's going to be a test, everyone thought as they waited nervously. You are to choose a class representative, he continued, and the whole class exploded in screams. Pick me. I am the obvious chose. Me. Chose me. You little beepers better choose the king as the class representative and me as vice. There were 5 people that was quiet. Both Todorokis, Izuku, Gwen and Momo. Just as everything calmed down, Izuku asked him, Sir, what is the job of the class representative? If this were the general studies of UA, then I would normally disregard you, but as this is the hero course, you as the class representative, you will need to do multiple things, Shota told them all. First is help with costumes or equipment of the students in the class, he told them as Ochako was thinking about what Izuku was doing for her. The next thing is helping a student with maximizing their quirk or equipment to the best of their abilities, he told them as he looked over everyone. Next, if helping to be an aid when looking for a support item, he added as everyone started to see if they were suited for the job. The next is that they have to help train each student and help them be in the best physical condition possible, he continued as he got a nod from everyone. Now that you know the jobs of the class representative, are you ready to become on for the class representative of the UA Hero Course Class 1A, Aizawa asked them. Everyone was quiet as no one knew what to do. Well, that was until Ida shot up out of his chair and yelled out, let us all not shout about ourselves and vote to see who would be our class representative. But won't we just vote for ourselves? Kirishima asked. Not if we do it right, Tenya told him, not seeing that one of his hands was raised to the sky. And it looks like you only want people to vote for you, Kaminari said to him as Ida's head snapped to him. And we don't have a way to vote, Katsui said as Ida sank back into his seat. Not really, Izuku said as he got up with his laptop. Sensei, can I use the printer? He asked him. What is he up to? Aizawa thought as he nodded his head. Izuku then walked up and started typing on his laptop before plugging it into the printer, and it printed out a single sheet of paper. They could see that on the paper, it had names on it. Izuku put his cloud ring on and started to make duplicates of the paper, and Aizawa got the idea. That was when everyone learned what cloud flames do, and when there was 28 of them, Aizawa took them and crossed names out. When Izuku walked back to his seat, he was given his paper so that he could vote for the person that would be the class representative for Class 1A. Now, while you're doing that, I'm going to have a nap, Shota told them all as he fell to the floor in his sleeping bag. After everyone had finished voting, the final score was this. Yuga Aoyama equals 0, Mina Ashido equals 0, Tsuyu Asui equals 0, Tenya Ida equals 0, Ochako Uraraka equals I, Masharao Ojiro equals 0, Denki Kaminari equals 0, Eijiro Kirishima equals 0, Koji Koda equals 0, Rikido Sato equals 0, Mezzo Shoji equals 0, Kyoka Jiro equals 0, Honta Siro equals 0, Fumikage Tokiyami equals 0, Shoto Todoroki equals 2, Toru Hagakure equals 0, Katsuki Bakugo equals I, Izuku Tennyson Midoriya equals EEE, Minoru Mineta equals 0, Momo Yaoyorozu equals E2, Mei Hatsume equals 0, Himiko Toga equals 0. Itsuka Kendo equals 0. Konako Heizono equals 0. Hitoshi Shinso equals 0. Fuyumi Todoroki equals I. Melissa Shield equals I. Gwendolyn Tennyson equals 0. Everyone looked at the lead that Izuku had over everyone. And so it was decided. Class 1A representative is Izuku Tennyson Midoriya, while his vice representative is Momo Yaoyorozu. Shota said as Moth Izuku and Momo stood in front of the class with Izuku bowing to everyone. Actually, sir, we want to know if you would add a vote yourself, Izuku asked him. This shocked the typically angry teacher as he looked at the crowd of students and then nodded his head. I've only known them for 3 days, and I care deeply about them, he thought as he gained a slight smile on his face. What has become of me, his thought continued as he added his vote. Yuga Aoyama equals 0. Mina Ishido equals 0. Tsuyu Asui equals 0. Tenya Ida equals 0. Ochako Uraraka equals I. Masharao Ojiro equals 0. Denki Kaminari equals 0. Eijiro Kirishima equals 0. Koji Koda equals 0. Rikido Sato equals 0. Mezzo Shoji equals 0. Kyoka Jiro equals 0. Honta Siro equals 0. Fumikage Tokiyami equals 0. Shoto Todoroki equals 2. Toru Hagakure equals 0. Katsuki Bakugo equals I. Izuku Tennyson Midoriya equals EEI. Minoru Mineta equals 0. Momo Yaoyorozu equals E2. Mei Hatsume equals 0. Himiko Toga equals 0. Itsuka Kendo equals 0. Konako Heizono equals 0. Hitoshi Shinso equals 0. Fuyumi Todoroki equals I. Melissa Shield equals I. Gwendolyn Tennyson equals I. Seeing that he had added 2 votes, Kyoka asked, "Why did you add 2 votes, sir?" "I'm a teacher, that's why," he told her as if it told her everything. "Now tomorrow we are going to USJ to train with All Might 13 in Class 1B, so I will want you all on your best behavior," he informed them. He then picked up his sleeping bag, walked out of the room, and closed the door. But he just stood there as he thought about what had just transpired. His students, whom he had threatened to expel, wanted him to vote to see if he would pick their class representative. "You really are a problem child, aren't you, Midoriya?" he thought as he walked back. "I will protect them all even if I will die doing so, then so be it," he added as he made his way to the staff room. Later on in the day, UA Academy, outside. Aoyama walked outside the main building of the UA and looked around before looking for a hiding spot. And he found it, and it was a spot that hid him from the cameras. He then pulled out his phone and called someone. "It's me." He, along with 13, the homeroom teacher of 1B and Eraserhead, is going to be at USJ tomorrow. No. Who are they? Yes, sir. And when he is dead, me and my parents are free. Thank you, and I need a way back into the building as there are cameras near me. No, for the last 2 days, I have been watching the cameras. They cannot see me going into this spot, but they will spot me coming out of it. Thank you, he said into the phone as a purple mist formed behind him as a tear fell from his eye. "I'm so sorry everyone for what is going to happen tomorrow," he thought as he walked into the mist. "I beg of all you all to forgive me," his thought continued. He failed to notice a floating pair of clothes that seemed to be watching him. So he wants to play the villain, Toru thought angrily as the sun shone on her and showed her face to show that she was scowling. Then he will be treated like one, she thought as she walked away. UA Academy, Lunch Rush Cafeteria. Izuku, Ochako and Tenya had sat down once they had gotten their food. "Well done, class representative," Ochako told him. "Thank you," he told her as he started to dig into his food. "I really did want to be the class representative for our class, but I do think that you can make an excellent class representative for our class, Midoriya," Tenya told him as his glasses seemed to gleam. "Thank you, Ida," Izuku told him as he then asked his mind back to the score. "I managed to win with 15 votes from the class and 1 from Aizawa-sensei," he told them. "And let's not forget that Yaoyorozu is your vice representative for our class, and I can only think of the great things that both of you will do for our class, Ida continued. You really did want the role, didn't you, Ida? Izuku asked him as Tenya looked at Izuku. Yay, you even have the look for it with the glasses and all, Ochako said as Ida looked shocked. Being class representative is not all about looks, Ida said to her. They didn't look off in a thoughtful look. Before he turned to the boy and asked, Ida, why did you want to be class representative? Tenya looked shocked at the sudden question. Well, do you know the Turbo Hero Ingenium? He asked them. Ochako shook her head, but Izuku said, he's currently 22nd, his office is in Naruhata, he has the quirk engine and going to take a stab in the dark and say he's your brother. Ida and Ochako's mouths dropped at that, and here I was thinking that I wasn't going to get anything, Ida said. Oh, wait for it, Gwen said as she sat down next to Izuku. And if you are his younger brother, then you must have designed your costume after your brother's Silver Age costume, Izuku said as Ida nodded his head. Seeing the look in Izuku's eyes, Gwen asked, you have a way to maximize Ida's quirk and costume, don't you? Looking shocked at what she said, he turned to Izuku. Have you got an idea on how to help me? Ida asked him. Ida, have you ever thought about using skates to help you in the means of getting faster? Izuku asked the boy. Ida looked stuck as he only thought about his speed with him running. Before he could speak, more alarms started blaring and with a loud voice saying, this is a warning, we have a trespasser on site, and so the vice kept repeating that over and over. And as if that was a start gun, everyone in the cafeteria started pancaking about what was happening, and so they all started running to the exit. Izuku, Ochako, Gwen and Tenya were pushed along with the crowd as they tried to get to the exit. All four of them was cramped and pushed up to a window as they could see that the press had somehow gotten past the gate. Ka liha frauds, Izuku yelled out, not realizing that he changed the language that he was using. Korjin koa pasi uzalesku shoulda for brainku all because Korjin want ael kichikato all might sheer teaching circa, he growled out. Cuz you're speaking in Twi'lek, Gwen told him. Izuku turned to and looked embarrassed before he schooled his face and activated the Omnitrix, and slammed it down. A massive green flash blinded those around him, and once it died down, stood in his place was Upgrade. I'm going to handle this, you guys just hang on, he said in a robotic voice. His body then turned to Blob and moved up the wall until he was on a speaker. Okay, everyone needs to calm down and look outside and see that it is only the press, Izuku told them as a lot of people was doing just that and was miffed at the length that they would go. The teachers are now handling it, and the police are on their way, so you all need to calm down and handle this like heroes, not headless chickens, he continued as the crowd started nodding their heads. Izuku, still as Upgrade, who had taken over a speaker, looked over all the students. Now that you all have calmed down, I need you all to make organized lines so that my classmates can make sure that everything is in order, Izuku told them all. Izuku could hear sirens that matched the police coming closer to the school, and as you can see, the police are on their way to deal with what has happened here, he informed them as some could see the flashing blue lights that were getting closer. Gwen, Ochako and Tenya all stood ready as the students came up to them. UA Academy, Nezu office. Nezu was looking over the camera feeds to try and find what had triggered the alarm. Something happened in the school, he thought as he looked at the screen in front of him. Shota and Toshinori walked in as Nezu looked at them. Did you find anything? He asked them. No, Aizawa told his boss. I think there was something, but I was recovering with students running around, Toshinori trailed off. That's found. At least we know now where to start our search for this intruder, the bear dog mouse told them. Yes, sir, they both said as they walked out. And Toshinori, I think that you will need to give Midoriya one for all soon if you are losing time, Nezu told the symbol. Shota looked at his college and nodded at what his boss had said. He's right, you know, Shota told him. I know, what all Toshinori said as he shifted to his hero form. UA Academy, Lunch Rush Cafeteria. Now that is taken care of you all, my return to your class, Izuku said as all the students filed out of the cafeteria. Izuku oozed and slid down the wall next to them before turning back into Upgrade's humanoid form. Let's get back to class, Izuku told the three of them with his computerized voice. So what is this alien form called? Ochako asked Izuku. I call this one upgrade, and his race is called the Galvanic Mechamo, Izuku told. And they can merge and improve technology, Gwen added in. As they walked, Ochako continued to ask questions about life out in space. All the while, Tenya was as quiet as a mouse. But his thoughts were as loud as a truck. Enba Midoriya, he thought as a girl with green eyes and black and white hair came into his head. How is she related to Izuku-san? He asked himself. Don't tell him, she told him as he looked over her student ID when the chaos in the cafeteria. He does not know me, and he must not know about me. Not yet anyway, that was the last thing she told him. And it had been playing over and over in his head. As they reached their class, everyone looked at Izuku with pride. Well done with how you handled it, Midoriya, Momo told him as she walked up to him. Thank you, Izuku told her as they both stood in front of the class. Now, as this class is for both Yaoyorozu and me to help with maximizing your quirks, so we will go through each of you as you tell us your quick and how you are using it now, Izuku told them all as Shota looked at them in shock. We can also use this to say about your suit and if you want to have it modified or not, Momo added. He got nods from the class and turned to Momo. Do you want to write this down, or do you want me to do it? He asked her. Producing a clipboard with a bit of paper and a pencil, she looked at him with a raised eyebrow. I shall do the writing, she told him. Very well, Izuku said, so he started at table number 1. Aoyama, your quirk, he asked the feminine-looking boy. My quirk is called Naval Laser, and it does what the name suggests, he said with his usual sparkle. And is you hero suit? Momo asked him. I have had no problem with it abort from when Ishido's melted thou the cape, he told them. They nodded, then moved on to table number 2. Ishido, your quirk is acid, right? Izuku asked her. That's right, Prez, she told him with a big smile on her face. Izuku nodded his head and muttered something to Momo before asking, and your hero suit? Momo asked her. It's fine, but I want it to look beepier, Mina said with a flirty smile. Izuku and Momo looked at each other before shrugging as Momo wrote it down. Now then, Asui-san, call me Suyu, Izuku said before being cut off by the frog girl. Okay then, Suyu-san, your quirk is Toad, Izuku asked her. Close it's frog, she corrected him. Izuku and Momo looked at each other and seemed to have a telepathic conversation before Izuku nodded his head. And my hero suit is okay, Suyu told them as they nodded their heads. Ida and Uraraka, I am helping both of you already, so there is no need for this, Izuku told them as they nodded their heads. Izuku and Momo both turned their heads to Mashirao. Ojiro, you quirk is your tail right? Momo asked him. That's right, the blonde nodded, and I think that I need something for my tail with my suit, he told them. Izuku nodded his head as he muttered something to Momo, who nodded her head. They then turned to the electric user, and before either of them could speak, I need a lot of help with this as I use too much electricity I do bane dead, and I need some sort of weapon that aids me with my quirk, Denki told them. They nodded their heads and then turned to the red-haired boy. So Kirishima, do you need any help in anything? Momo asked him. The main thing I want is to improve my time with my quirk, he told them. Izuku got a look in his eye that sent a chill down Kirishima's back. Oh sweet God, not that look, Gwen thought as she shivered in Kirishima. Izuku grew a face of pure evil as two horns formed on his head and an evil smile formed. I have something in mind for you, Izuku told him. Being fearful, a halo formed over Momo's head as she said, nothing bad will happen, she told him. The whole class looked on, and none of them knew, not even Izuku, that they were both covered in mist flames. Izuku and Momo turned to Kota, who weighs something down before handing it over. We can work on this, Izuku told him as the horns and halo dissipated. And we can get some pets for the dorm while we're at it, Momo told him. They then turned their heads to the boy with the sugar powers. So Sato, what is your quirk? Izuku asked him. My quirk is called Sugar Rush, and for every 10 grams of sugar that I eat, my strength increases by 5 each time, but if I overeat, I have a sugar rush, Rikido told them. Izuku and Momo looked at each other, and the mist flames came back, but this time, they both had a devilish appearance. We have a plan, they both said as one. Sweet God, there are two of them, Katsuki thought as she felt turned on by Izuku, but deep down, she knew that her dream from the night before that she must share him with the other girls. But she will be the queen. Shoji, do you need any help with your quirk? Izuku's voice brought her out of her thinking. No, thank you, and my hero suit is fine, a tentacle turned into a mouth and told them. They both shrugged before turning to the punk rock girl. Jiro-san, I already have something in mind for you, but you're quick as the earphone jack that can make your hearing better, right? Izuku asked her. That's right, Kyoka told him, and the main thing I need is something that helps me fight up close or something ranged, she continued. We can do something with that, Momo told her as she wrote it on the paper. Momo then turned to the tape user. Zero, I have an idea that can help you. I just need to see the gym under the dorm first, Momo told him as she wrote down something. They then turned to the blackbird in the room. Tokiyami, you quirk as Black Void or Ebony Shadow? Momo asked him. Dark Shadow, and I would like to tell you in private, Fumikage told them as they nodded their heads. When they moved on to the dual element user before, turning to each other, nodded, and then moved on. They are trying to find a way for him to use his fire, Shota thought as he looked at the president and his vice. For some reason, I know that they will be able to do it, his thoughts continued. Hagakure, first I need to ask if your quirk is an emitter type or a mutant type, Momo asked the clothes. A doctor told me that it's a mutant type, Toru told them. Izuku turned his head to Aizawa. Sensei, can you use your quirk on her? He asked him. Shota shrugged his shoulders before he turned to the invisible teen. His eyes glowed red, and his hair floated up as in seat number 16 sat a girl with short wavy lime green hair, tan skin, big blue eyes and large eyelashes. Everyone looked at her as she looked at her hands before Izuku walked up to her. Nice to meet you, Hagakure, he softly said as she looked at him. She looked up at him before tears formed in her eyes and a massive smile formed on her face. And you, Midoriya, but please call me Toru, she told him as Aizawa blinked and Toru returned to being invisible. Aizawa turned back to Izuku. What did that achieve? He asked the boy who could turn into aliens. I think that Hagakure. No, Toru's quirk may be a mix between emitter and mutant, and she is standing on the line of both of them, Izuku told A1's homeroom teacher. Then why am I always invisible? She asked the Omnitrix user. Before Izuku could answer her, Momo spoke up. It could be your subconscious is trying to help you. So you're saying that something might have happened, and my subconscious is making my quirk work 24/7, she asked the two of them. I don't know how the brain or subconscious works, so I suggest you talk to Hound Dog to see what it could be, Shota told his student. Got it, she said, and Izuku could tell that she nodded. Izuku then moved on to his lover, Kachin. The main thing that we need to work on with you is your temper, he told her. Katsuki opened her mouth to say something, but then she saw Izuku's eyebrow raised. Fine, she pouted. Next is my turn, Izuku said as he thought about what he needed to do, and I know how to help me, and it involves a lot of fighting, watching and learning, so next is goes to Mineta, and you need to stop being a perv, Izuku told the petite teen. What? Why? He demanded the green-haired lion. You are training to be a hero, and all you do is act like a creep that looks thou a window or someone that sniffs panties, Momo told him. You are also going to Hound Dog to fix your problem, Shota told the ball boy. Mineta tried to say something, but Aizawa's eyes glowed red, and it beat the words that formed in Mineta's throat. Yes, sir, was all he managed to say. I'm next, and I know what I will need to do, and it is to expand my knowledge on materials and other things like that, Momo said as she wrote it down. Hatsume, do you need any help with your quirk? Izuku asked the pink-haired girl. No thanks, Prez, but all I need is my arrows and ideas for my arrows, was his response. They then turned to Himiko, who looked at them in return. Toga, do you need blood for your quirk to work or any form of DNA to work? Momo asked her. It has to be blood, Himiko told them. They will judge me like everyone else, she thought as she looked at the two of them. Izuku hummed as he thought about something, then he looked down at his Omnitrix. Could that work? He thought as he made plans in his head about it. I have an idea on how to help you, but I will need time to do so, Izuku told her. Thank you, she said as she covered her shock up with a mask of calm. No judgment, what the hell, she thought to herself. Momo then turned to the big-fisted girl and said, you will need to get more fighting styles under your belt. I know, Kendo said as she nodded her head. Izuku then turned to Konako, and he felt numb in the side as she could see that he had an idea for her, or rather, he walked up to her and asked, what size of gloves are you? This shocked her so much at the odd question she said, what? What size of gloves are you? He asked once more. Ladies medium, and can I ask why? She asked him. Call it a hunch, but your ash fire needs something to be used to get set alight, he said. That's right, she told him. To help both you and Yaoyorozen, Izuku told her as he whispered something in Momo's ear. Momo seemed to nod her head before writing something down, and he then moved on. He wants to help me, Konako thought as she formed a small smile on her face. She and Himiko looked at each other, and they seemed to carry a message. This place is better and treats us better than the League ever did, was that the message said. They then turned to the younger version of Aizawa. Shinso, we first need to get your confidence up and work on your quirk, Momo told him as she was still shocked at what Izuku had planned to do with her quirk. That will take a lot of mental power to what he wants, she thought about it. They then turned to the older Todoroki in the room before saying, I have an idea. They then turned to each other and nodded their heads. She would go along with it because they had a halo above their heaves. So why wouldn't she trust them? Then they moved on to the other quirkless in the room. So, Miss Shield, do you need any help with any gadgets or anything? Izuku asked her. Melissa took a thinking pose for a few seconds before saying, I would like to have a few vehicles and some other suits, she told them. Izuku and Momo blinked at her before they said as one, we can do that. Note to self. Give Class 1A driving, sailing and flying lessons, Shota thought as he could see the sparkle in Izuku's eyes, and to have a garage built at their dorm, he added. So cuz do you need any help with anything? Izuku asked Gwen as she looked thoughtful for a second before shaking her head. Nothing now, but I will let you both know if I need anything, she told them. After Momo had put it down, both she and Izuku walked to their seats as Shota walked to the podium. Okay, no, that is done, let us start our lesson, he told his class. As the lesson went on, Shota looked at Izuku as he took notes and asked and answered questions. Is he truly ready for such a big responsibility like that? Quirk, he asked himself. Later that day, UA Academy, Class 1A dorm. Izuku talked to Ochako as they walked to the elevator, and Izuku pressed the button labeled with A.T. So, did you talk to the company that did your suit? Izuku asked the brown-haired girl next to him. Yep, she said as she looked out the glass back of the elevator. They said that I can keep my suit, and I got my money back, she continued. I see, Izuku said with a hint of humor in his voice as they reached the basement. And they could see that they filled it with workout equipment from the usual weightlifting to treadmills to gymnastic equipment. There was a large swimming pool they could use to help them, and other in the corner were 3 rooms built in. Each had an emblem on a door. The first was a pink arrowhead that showed that it belonged to Mai. The next one had a gold bat emblazed into it, it was Millisauce's. The final one had the symbol of the Omnitrix on it, so that one was Izuku's. Okay, come see what I have for you, Izuku told her as both of them walked into his lap. The lab looked to be filled with some tools, boxes full of nuts and bolts. There was an area where he used to make chemicals and other things. Metal tables sat in the middle of the room with chains dangling from the ceiling. A very high-tech computer seemed to turn on when they had turned the room. Ochako looked at the orange rocket booster sitting on the table in front of her. Is this one of the modules? She asked him. Izuku looked at her, then at the orange rocket booster. Yay, this is Module 1. Rocket, Izuku told her as she looked it over. As she looked it over, Izuku picked up a small arm-mounted device that looked like a rocket ship that had buttons on it. Uraraka, here you go, he told her as she looked at him. She looked over at him before walking over and could see the small device in his hands. Oh, thanks, she said as she strapped it to her arm and looked at him. Okay, type in the code 0 to 0 - 0 volt for me, please, he told her. And so she did as he had asked, and once she had pressed the V, she started to glow. She looked around as she was freaking out before her eyes fell on two mannequins in the corner of the room. One had Izuku's hero suit that he looked to be, and the other had her hero suit. It looked like her original but round the wrists and around the calf and shins. And each had a distinct marking on them. Her right arm had an orange circle. Her left arm had a green square. Her right leg had a blue cross. And her left leg had a yellow triangle. And before she knew it, her clothes were replaced by her hero suit. And she could feel that all of her clothes were replaced by it. You mean for it to take all of my clothes for the shift? She asked him. Yay, I mean, I could only take your blazer, tie, shirt and skirt, he told her. Well, I think it took my underwear as well, she told him as she was blushing up a storm. Right, put the code in once more, and it should change you back to your uniform, he told her as he tried to keep the blood from rushing south. GGG, got it, she told him as she could see that he was blushing, so she input the code of 0 to 0-0 volt. And so the device once more covered her body in light as she could feel that her hero suit was leaving her body and was being taken away. And once the light had died down, it had shown that none of her clothes had returned to her. Ochako was so shocked that she was now naked in a room with a boy for the first time that she could not form any words or any noise, but what surprised her the most was Izuku. He had turned away from her so that it could give her some dignity. But she could tell that he was bleeding from the nose and had a tent in his trousers. Think that it needs some more testing, Izuku said as he tried not to look at Ochako. She was about to try the code once more before the lion within the green boy sent a wave of golden energy out of Izuku. She looked at Izuku, who looked in shock at the energy forming around him in waves. What are you doing? She asked him. Not me, Izuku said as he tried to pull in the energy. The waves were getting pulled back into him, but she could feel the need for something that only Give could give her. What do you mean? She asked him as her voice became labored and gained a blush. Geki Juken is a fighting style that brings out the animal spirit with the user's soul, Izuku said as he was feeling hot under the collar, and so it also makes us like the animal that is within us as well, he told her after some panting. So what does that mean? She asked him as she could feel herself getting wet. The lion within my soul wants to breed, Izuku told her as he struggled to take the reins of the power back in, and it seems that the animal with your soul wants my lion, he continued. He could see another flower join his gold. Ochako looks at him in confusion before noting the other color. A color that spoke to her. Magenta. And so her own waves of energy started to burst out of her and started to take a form. And Izuku's was not far behind it. The magenta energy started to form into a large cat. It held power in its steps as it walked over to the lion created from Izuku. I was not expecting that, Izuku said as Ochako unconscious was getting closer. What do you mean? She asked him as she unknowingly started to help Izuku get undressed. You so loving and carefree, he said as he discarded his shirt. I always thought that you were a dog, he told her as he unbuckled his pants. Not a tiger, as he took off his shoes. Their eyes turned to that of a feline as they looked each other in the eyes, and instinct seemed to flow as the rest of Izuku's clothes hit the floor. He pounced on Ochako. Both the cats watched their masters as they started to fall to the sin of their bodies. They both started to make out on the floor as a purr was let out of Ochako as he began to trail beeps down her body. He then latches his mouth to one of her beeps as she could feel that his dick was begging to enter her. So she opened her legs. She felt that Izuku started to push into her and stretch her walls. And in his haze of lust, he did not notice that he was drilling into her fast. She did not care either, as the lust was going straight to her head as she was getting pounded into oblivion by Izuku. By her lion, and she was his tiger. As he hammered into her, the animal spirits started to join the fun. Izuku could feel that he was getting close to his release. Ochako, I close, he growled out as he looked her in the eye. She moved her head up to his ear and whispered to him, breed me, which sent him over the edge as she could feel the seeds of his lust trying to be planted in her field. And she came not soon after him as the floor of his lab soaked with her juices. Both the lion and the tiger returned to their masters as they both just looked at each other. Well, Well, a voice broke their gaze with each other to see that Katsuki was in the doorway of his lap as she looked like she was fingering herself and had made her panties soaking wet with her juices. The king of 1A has found one as his concubines, she said as she walked over to them as she stripped her clothes to join them. "Www, what are you doing?" Ochako asked her as she could feel Izuku pull out of her. And in a deep part of her mind, she was a little sad that he had done so. And as if reading her mind, Now don't be sad, you will be plowed again and again by our king," Katsuki told her as she joined them on the floor. She crawled over them and had her above Ochako's face as she faced Izuku. "My king, please lock the door so that no one interrupts us," she asked him. "Okay," Izuku said, confused about why, as he got and typed the locking code into the door. Before Ochako could even move, she felt something enter her love cave. She looked to see that it was Katsuki eating her out. "The king and I gave each other the other's bipati, and he has taken yours as well," she told Ochako as she licked and ate Ochako's. From each word Katsuki had spoken sent vibrations thou Ochako. "Well then, if Izuku is the king, I must be the queen," she said as she started to eat Katsuki's glistening. Izuku, seeing this in front of him, got hard once more as he could see that two girls wanted his dick in them. "Oh what does that makes me?" Katsuki asked as she added her fingers to find Ochako's G-spot. And find it she did as Lady Cum was flowing from the brown-haired girl, who did not want to be outdone, added her fingers into the honey pot of the explosion girl on top of her and started to finger beep her as Izuku's plaything when I am not around, she growled. Ochako used her eyes to signal Izuku as Katsuku's and to beep Katsuki as good as he beeped her. And he did as asked as he went all the way to the hilt. "Did that's cheating having the Key King help you wiwi with beeping me," Katsuki said as she was in heaven once more as she could feel Izuku stretch her wide open with his dick. As the three of them were having their threesome, a noise broke through the room, causing them to freeze. "Mayageta Yuzora no Hoshidachi no Hikari," someone singing. It was someone's phone. But before either of her two lovers could check it out, Katsuki went back to rocking her hips and eating out Ochako. And soon, the noise from the phone was forced out and replaced with the beeping of the three on the floor. Izuku could feel himself getting close to the edge once more as he called out, "Kachin, I'm close. I want to feel your scene in me once more, my king," she called out to him, and not soon after, she could feel his hot liquid in her as she came all over Izuku's dick and Ochako's face. And after seeing Izuku come in Katsuki and feeling the cum from Katsuki, Ochako came. And it was powerful. UA Academy, main building, Nezu's office. "That's strange," Tishinori said in his weak form as he had his phone to his ear. "Nothing," Nezu asked him as the rest of the staff with them in his office. "No," he said as he hung up, "I'll talk to him tomorrow when I see him about inheriting one for all," Toshinori told them. "Are you sure that Midoriya is the right person for this?" Ectoplasm asked Toshinori. "When there are people in danger, those with one for all will need to be there so that the people are safe," Toshinori said as he started to grow to his hero form. "And I know that when the time comes, Izuku will step up and be one to replace. He is the symbol of peace in this world," he told them. "It's all fine to talk about it," Chio said as she looked at the man before her, "but will you show him how to use it?" she asked him. "I will do my best to do so," he said as he looked around. "I am new to teaching, and that is why I decided to take this job, to teach my successor," he continued. "And the other students?" Shota asked him. "When I knew that I must teach and train a successor, I knew I must teach others too, so I made it possible to have someone be the next symbol of peace, and I think that that person is Izuku Tennyson Midoriya," All Might told them with his winning smile. "Don't you think it's too much for some people?" Midnight asked him. "No, I do not," he told them as they could see that he genuinely thought that Izuku was next to him. No, he was going to be better than him in every way. Class 1A dorm, basement, Izuku's lab. After the three of them were done with their threesome, they all got dressed, and for Ochako, her new device worked. "So things change your clothes for your hero suit and back?" Katsuki asked her. "Yay, Midoriya made it for me," Ochako told her. Izuku looked at Ochako. "You know that you can call me by my name," he told her with a smile. "Or a pet name," Katsuki said as she looked over Module 1. "Rocket, are you going to make more of these? She asked Izuku as he looked it over. I have another 9 ideas that I am currently working on, Izuku told them both as he did some final work on the rocket, and Kachin used to call me Deku, so, Izuku told her. Okay then, Deku, and I think that is a perfect name for you as it had an I can do it vibe, she said. Very well, my Venus, Izuku said to Ochako. Said girl blushed up a storm and was given a name after a goddess of love and beauty. This is turning out like my dream, Katsuki thought as she looked at the Sean in front of her before she had to make up her mind. Do I let him date more than just me and round face or not? She thought back to her dream she had and said, King the First have an idea. And what is that? Izuku asked her as he looked at the blonde woman. What would you say on having a harem? She asked him. Izuku looked shocked, while Ochako looked shocked before she started to think about it. If I do this, I can have a great guy like him and keep having him put his dick in me, or I can lose someone else, and so like that she had made up her mind. I'm in, she told them both. See, round face is in, Katsuki said as she walked closer to him and whispered, I know you want to see me eat some and then some. Ochako, seeing that his sense of reason was almost out the window, joined in while whispering in his other ear, Beep Bomb is right, we can even get some of the older women, like Midnight, Mount Lady and a few others like the rest of the girls in our class. Shit, both of them are teaming up now, he thought as he tried to keep some images out of his head. They just kept coming back. Midnight bouncing on his dick while Momo was forcing Katsuki to lick her and screaming out Izuku's name while she was doing it. And so, with his mind joining them with their assault on his mind, he did the only thing that any man would do. Fine, Izuku said as both girls cheered and said he would get a harem. He knew that Mineta would do something when he found out, but for now, he had the startings of a harem. So who do you think would be the next one for this craziness? Izuku asked them both. They both turned to each other before turning back to their new man and said as one, I don't have a clue, in complete glee and hyperness. Of course not, was the response that he gave. And so the three of them walked out of his lab and into the elevator. Class 1A dorm, Mineta's bedroom. Mineta was sitting on his bed as he looked thou versus sights until he had a full body shiver. I feel a disturbance in the perv, he said as he looked around. He walked over to his door and looked through the peephole to find Izuku and Katsuki walking into their apartments. Something is fishy here, and I don't mean my tuna sandwich, Mineta thought as he squinted his eyes before returning to his task. The next day, UA Academy, Class 1A classroom. After what had happened the previous day with the breaking into the academy, everyone was on edge and on the lookout to see if there were any more intruders on the campus. Everyone that was a part of 1A was waiting for their teacher. And it was a really slow day for the class anyway. As Izuku looked around to see what his class was doing, he saw varying things. From Yuga, it seemed that there was sadness was taking over him. Mina and Eijiro were talking and laughing. Suyu was talking to Toru, but something told him that she was not looking at the frog girl that she was talking to. No, she was looking at the Yuga. Tenya was in his seat reading a small book. Ochako was going over what Izuku had made for her and looking his way now and then. Mashirao and Honta talked about what they thought about what would happen today. When he came in this morning, Denki was reading over something that Izuku gave him to help with his quirk. Koji was sitting quietly in his seat. Rikido seemed to be reading what looked like a cookbook. Mezzo and Fumikage talked about their history and what they went through as they looked different from everybody. I mean, Honta just had to wear long sleeves to hide his elbows while Tenya had just to wear trousers. As his eyes moved over to Kyoka, who met his eyes before looking away with a red face, it looked like she was listening to music. Shoto was quietly talking to his older sister. When he looked at his lover and somewhat girlfriend, Katsuki, who smiled at him, he remembered their conversation yesterday. Then there was himself as he drew more ideas to help Ochako. Behind him was Mineta, who was doing what he did best. He was being a creep. Momo was reading a small book titled, Tale of the Emerald Dragon. Mei was tinkering with something, and it was looking good. Which meant it was going to explode anytime now. Hamiko and Konako talked to each other and shot a look now and then at Yuga. What's that about? Izuku thought as he watched them before moving on. Itsuka was also reading a book, but this one was called Wolf in Sheep's Clothing. Hitoshi was reading a comic book. Melissa was looking through a book and trying to develop something that she could use. And Gwen was looking through her spellbook. And so that was what the class was like before Izuku saw a shadow at the door. "Everyone get to your seats," he called out. Everyone got to their seats as the door opened, and Shota walked in. "Stand," Izuku called out as everyone stood up. "Bo," they all bowed to the underground hero. "Sit," he finished as everyone returned to their seat. "Good. It only took you all 2 seconds," Shota told them all as they all looked at each other. "Now I am going to need everyone ready for doing say so," he said to his class before pressing a button as the briefcases came out the wall. "I want you suited and booted and down by the bus before heading to the USJ, Shota told them. A few minutes later, 1A bus. On the bus, everyone was buzzing in their hero suit as they got ready for what they would do. "Midoriya-san," Tsuyu asked Izuku as she turned to him. "Yes, Asui-san," Izuku asked her. "First, call me Tsuyu or Su-chan," she told him as he nodded his head. "Second, your powers are weird," she informed him. "What part of my powers are weird?" he asked her. "Well, you have a fighting style that can call on the animal spirit resting in your soul, you have these strange fires, and you can turn into aliens," she told him. "She is right, you know," Hitoshi said as he sat on the other side of Izuku. "Your powers are weird." "Cool, but weird," he added as that got nods from around him. "All I have is hardening," Eijiro said as he looked down at that, "and everyone else has something flashy power I can never stand out," he said as he started to mope. "I don't think that," Izuku said as he got the red-haired boy's attention. "I mean, yeah, it does not speed like XLR8 or Ida." Izuku nodded, "but you have a hard body like Diamond Head, so that you can be a shield for anyone," he told the boy. "You think so?" Eijiro asked him. "Yay," Izuku said. "What about my naval laser? It is powerful." Yuga said as he gained a sparkle around his eye. "That is until you blow your stomach," Mina said as Yuga seemed to deflate. "Back to what I was saying, your powers are weird but powerful, and I think you will be the first pick for anyone to be their sidekick, hero," Tsuyu said as Gwen nodded her head. "She's right, you know, and even though there are a lot of powerful people in our class, their temperament is something else," Gwen said as she pointed at the others. "Both Todorokis are as cold as the ice they use," she said as both people looked at Gwen before Shoto turned to look back out the window, but Fuyumi looked shocked. "Did they see me as a cold person?" Fuyumi thought as she tried to think about any conversations with her classmates. But she found none. The only conversations she's ever had when she joined UA, she has only talked to both her brothers. "I need to branch out and talk to the rest of them," she thought. "All right, quiet down. We're here," Shota called out as everyone turned to look out the window. "Okay, follow me," he told them as he motioned for them to follow him. As they all got off the bus, another bus met them with more students and a man with silver hair. "Aizawa, have you seen All Might?" the man with silver asked him. "Sorry, Khan," Shota shook his head before turning to the students. Class representative and vice from both classes in front, Shota called out. Izuku, Momo, a girl with black and gray hair and a short chubby boy, walked up. "Now, the rest of you behind them," Shota called out. They started making their way in to see everything there. "This looks like Universal Studios built this place," Ochako said to Mina. "Yeah, I get what you mean," Mina said as she looked around. "Do you think they shoot films here?" Ochako asked. "I feel like they should," Fuyumi said as the two girls turned to her to ask why. "Mine, Natsu and Shoto's father told us all about this place and that film industries have to pay thousands to get in here to do documentaries," she told him as she gave them a small smile. "So have they filmed anything here?" a girl with vines for hair asked her. Fuyumi placed her finger to her cheek as if thinking, but a boy with spiky white hair spoke up. "If I remember, it was called Morphtronic, Rise of the Red Archfiend," he told them. "They made another one?" Mina asked him. "Natsu's right," Fuyumi said, "and I think they're making an All Might film soon," she questioned her memory. As they walked up, they found someone that looked like an astronaut. 13, Izuku thought before he heard a loud squeal from behind him. "Ochako, are you all right?" Suyu asked her friend. 13 is my favorite hero, and I finally get to meet her, she squealed as she hopped back and forth from one foot to another. I like I'm in a dream, she said as she looked at her idol. Round face never thought I would you become a fangirl for the main request hero, Katsuki said as she looked at her fellow girlfriend of the Shishiken user. Shota walked up to 13 long with the silver-haired man, eraser head. Vlad, good you're both here, she greeted them. 13, where's All Might? Shota asked her. He was out patrolling and reached his limit, she said before holding up 3 fingers. Izuku, seeing the lack of appliance of his mentor, saw the number of fingers that 13 held up, and it formed a hole in his stomach. Only 3 hours. It was 5 yesterday, he thought. Shota and Izuku matched their eyes for a second but sent a message. I hope you are ready for it because it soon will be your problem. But Izuku was not the only one that saw the 3 fingers. Boss can take out Sensei here, but do I want that? Konako thought as she looked at her gloves. Gloves are given to her by Izuku to help with her quirk. So Sensei is at his limit and soon with be covered eye and blood, Himiko thought, but at the end turned sad for an unknown reason to her. Why is All Might not here? Yuga thought as he tried to stay calm. But I now know his limit is 3 hours. All for one will be pleased and then we will be out of his debt, his train of thought continued. The 3 heroes then turned to, it seems that All Might is running late, and I have one thing, make that 2, 3, or 4, 13 said as the number kept rising higher and higher. 13 went on before 6 of them snapped their heads to look down the stairs to see something. They saw an ocean of dark purple smoke formed into a person-like shape with yellow eyes that looked around before more people started to walk out of the purple mist. Sensei, is this part of today's lesson? A bold boy asked Vlad. No, Monoma, those down there are villains, Vlad told his student. This shocked most of the students before another person walked out of the mist. It was a man with messy grayish-blue hair and pale skin. He was wearing a black shirt and very dark blue jeans, on his feet were red sneakers, and all over his body were hands. Kurogiri, where is All Might? He asked the purple mist man, showing that he was the leader of this attack. I do not know, but it looks like we have something to hold us for now, the mist man said as another person walked out. No call that WHING a person was a far stretch, it looked and felt like a monster. Ah, I see his students, the one with the hands over his body said, and when he hears that they are getting attacked by villains, he said. He'll come running, Kurogiri said as his eyes turned sadistic. So what do we do first, and who do attack first, he asked. I say we separate them from the teachers, and they are the ones we will attack for, the man with the hand over his face said before he snapped his head up and started to send out a golden aura. Kurogiri looked at his boss before seeing 2 more golden auras above the stairs. Well, Simba and Nala are here with no Mufasa, he said with dark glee in his voice. Shota looked at Izuku and the girl with black and gray hair glowing gold and the same as the ringleader of the villains. Right now, there are 3 lions in this building, Midoriya, that girl and the ringleader, and if I remember right, this is a male lion attacking a pride, and these 2 lions are on the defensive, he thought as he saw that the 3 of them was crouching and got ready to attack. Midoriya, Shota called out. Both Izuku and the girl turned to look at him. What the? Shota thought as he looked at Vlad, who shook his head before turning back to them. You stay with the class and leave the building, he told them. Brother and I need to remove that person, but, they both thought as they looked back down and then at the rest of the students. Fine, they said simultaneously. Kaminari, have you managed to contact you outside yet? He asked the blonde with the black stripe in his hair. No, sir. They seem to be jamming us, he panicked. Shota walked up to the stairs as he put his goggles on and turned into Eraserhead as Vlad walked up next to him. Class representatives, make sure that you can get out and inform the staff at the academy, Vlad told the students. What are they doing? Minoru as he shacked. They're going to fight the villains, Shoto said as he looked unfazed by everything. Let us show you how real heroes work, Vlad told his students as he got ready to jump. But neither of your fighting styles fits this type of fighting, Izuku called out to them. He's right, you'll lose if you both go in there, the other Midoriya called out. Now, both of you listen well when we say that, Eraserhead said as he walked forward. No hero would he be good if you were only a one-trick pony, Vlad said as they jumped down. 13 Guard the children, he called out. Izuku and the girl just stood and watched as the two heroes took on the, come on you two, 13 called out. King Enba, come on, Katsuki and the girl with vines for hair called out. They both turned to join their class and make sure that no one before purple formed in front of them. Now, let's not go just yet, Kurogiri said as he materialized in front of them. And how rude of me I am. Kurogiri and we, he said as he pointed at his fellow invaders, League of Villains and we are here to kill All Might, he told them. Behind his visor, Izuku's eyes narrow at the, but why attack him here and not out on the streets where he can get distracted, he asked the Mist Man. He turned to Izuku and said in a cheery voice, and if we did that, then we would have to deal with other pro heroes as well. With the way he said, it sounded like he had a smile on his face. Then it's our duty as heroes in training to take you down, Izuku said as his rings lit up with the sky flames. The girl next to him was in a skin-tight red and white suit with the red flame design, knee-high boots, fingerless elbow-high gloves, and a golden headdress with a green gem in the center. She had red makeup over her face. Elemental hero Burstinatrix Japanese card art. And you have to get past us, Enba said as she formed two fireballs in her hands. Kurogiri looked around at the students, and each of them was getting ready to attack him. No, this won't do now, will it? He said as he shook his head. He sent his mist out as it swallowed some of the students. Now I know his plan, 13 thought as she looked around the USJ. Damn it, she cursed. She could see that the mist was about to swallow more students, so she pointed her fingers at it. The cups over her fingers popped off as she yelled out, "Black hole," as it started to beat the mist into her fingers. As the black hole dispersed the mist, she looked at the mist person. "You shall take no more of them," she said to him. USJ. Ruins Zone. Inside a city with destroyed buildings, a mist arose from the floor. It spat out Katsuki, Eijiro, Itsuka, a boy with samurai-like armor, a girl in a purple bodysuit, and a boy with a dark blue suit with diamonds growing out of him. Destiny Hero Diamond Dude. The six of them looked around to see them surrounded by villains. "Look at these small fries," a villain that looked like a monkey said. "Gay down here, you monkey shit beep," Katsuki yelled at the villain. Such a vulgar mouth for a lady to have, a woman with blade-like fingers. "We have been pushed into the deep end," the girl in purple said as she looked around. Each of them got ready to fight for their lives. USJ. Landslide Zone. The purple mist formed above Earth that seemed to have buried buildings. As Shota, Toru, Himiko, a boy dressed in full-back clothing, a boy dressed in a blue jacket and beige pants with knee pads, and a boy dressed in a black and white suit with a white D in the center of his chest. Danny Phantom. They all turned to see that villains were making their way to them. Aoyama, that bastard, Toru thought when she saw the villains making their way to them. "What do we do?" the boy in the blue jacket asked them. "We fight Saburaba," the boy in the fullback suit told him. "Are you sure, Kuwaro?" Saburaba asked him. "I am," Kuwaro said as they got ready. "Whose side should I fight on?" Himiko asked herself as she felt something inside her tell her to join her classmates. And she did. USJ. Mountain Zone. On a mountainside, the mist formed like a door as Denki, Momo, Kyoka, Yuga, Enba, a girl in a bull body red and blue suit that had a black web theme to it. On her chest was a tiny back spider and on her back was another spider, but this one was red, Amazing Spider-Man, but a girl and a boy in a dark green jumpsuit. Where are we? Kyoka asked as she looked around. "I think that we are in the Mountain Zone," Momo said as she looked around. "Mountain Zone?" the one in the jumpsuit asked. "Do you nothing of the USJ?" Momo asked him. Before he could talk, a voice cut in, "Your luck has run out now." They all looked up to find someone with a skull mask looking down at them. USJ. Conflagration Zone. Inside a down that had buildings constantly burning, a portal of mist spat out Mashirao, Fuyumi, a boy in a dark green cloak, a girl in a pale purple, knee-length kimono with a white and a boy dressed like a Jiangshi. "Well, that was fun," the Jiangshi said as he got up. Fuyumi looked around. "Shit," she called out. "What's the matter?" The girl in the kimono asked. My quirk will be less powerful here, Fuyumi said. That's good to know, a man in a black bodysuit said as he was with many people looking at the students. Double shit, Fuyumi said as she looked at the USJ downpour zone. In a dome that was full of rain and heavy, a mist portal formed as Koji, Fumikage, Mei, Melissa and the girl with vines for hair were dropped out before it closed. Mei looked around to try and find anything, but she could not see anyone. It seems that we are safe for now, she said before muttering, I should never have let my mother talk me into being a hero. It's not all bad, Melissa said as she looked around. Don't be so sure, Fumikage said as he pointed out in the distance. The girls turned to see that a yellow person with spikes was walking toward them. Well, that looks fun, Mei said in a deadpan as she got her bow ready. USJ flood zone. Above a pool of water, a purple mist portal dropped Izuku, Minoru, Natsu, a girl with horns on her head and Suyu into it. As they all fell into the water, they all looked around to find out where they were, and they found out they were in a lake with a boat in it. I think we are in the flood zone, Izuku said. What is that? Minoru asked as he pointed out something heading their way. It was a shark fin heading their way. Natsu placed his hand on the water and sent out a blast of ice that froze the water around the shark. Get to the ship, Izuku called out to the others as they nodded. Natsu made a bridge to the boat as Suyu wrapped her tongue around Minoru and jumped there. The girl with the horns jumped on the bridge and ran at full speed to the boat. Izuku sent sky flames to his hands and flew out of the water flew to the boat. But before he could get to the boat, the water rose to make a giant hand and swatted him onto the ship. As Izuku landed, he looked around to find that there were more villains than just the shark or the one that could control water. I say we just wait for the teachers, Minoru said as he hid. The only way that can happen is if they get past that warped villain, Izuku said as he tried to form an idea in his head. He looked at Natsu and the girl with horns and asked, what are your quirks? Why? The girl asked him. Remember what that mist villain said, Izuku told them. They're here to kill All Might, Natsu said as his eyes shot wide. That big one, he said as he remembered the monster that stepped out last that had its brain on display. With both our sensei taking out the minor ones, Suyu said as it started to make sense to her. They will get tired with fighting them, the girl with the horns added. Natsu turned to Izuku. I have quirk called Sub-Zero, he said as ice formed around his hand. I have complete control of ice and can make ice, he added. My quirk is Horn Cannon, the girl said as her horns popped off her head and started to float in the air around. It allows me to detach and launch my horns and use them projectiles, she told him. Izuku nodded and looked down at the villains as the plan formed in his head. Okay, here's the plan. Izuku was saying before was cut off my perv of 1A. You want to fight these villains? He asked them all. Mineta, they underestimated us, Izuku told the ball teen. What do you mean? Minoru asked him. If they knew that Suyu was a frog, that this Todoroki could control ice or I could use my snow flames to control the water, Izuku started. They would not have sent us here, Suyu said as his eyes gained realization. First, I will draw them to me as I fly over them, Izuku said as he looked at them. Then I will form a whirlpool that will beat them in, he told them as they nodded. Mineta, you and, Izuku asked the horned girl. Pony, she said. You and Pony will start sending your balls and horns at the villains to get them together, they nod. Suyu, when they are both done, get them both out of there, he told the frog girl. Got it, Izuku, she said to him. Toady, Izuku said before getting cut off by Natsu. My friends call me Natsu, he told the boy. Then Natsu freezes the water, Izuku told the older teen. Got it, boss, Natsu said as he nodded his head. Izuku shot off with his sky flames as the others got ready. Massive claws of water shot out of the lake to try and hit him, but they do not get close. As he flew to the other side of the lake, he landed and changed the sky flames to snow flames and stuck his hands into the water. Here goes nothing, he said as he pushed the snow flames to spread out the water as the villains looked around confused. Hydro vortex, Izuku called out. The snow flame then creates a powerful vortex of water that starts to pull the villains. What the? One of them called out. Hey, is this you? Another asked the one that can control water. No, he said. Suyu jumped, holding Pony and Minoru as the balls and horns started to rain down. All the villains started to get stuck together. I'm starting to go numb, the shark said as it looked at Natsu fall to the water, letting out a frosty mist of his body. Oh shit, someone said as Natsu landed on the water and froze it solid. Jotunheim, he yelled out. Natsu joined the rest of them before they started to make their way to Central Plaza to aid their teachers. USJ. Entrance. The rest of the students were getting ready to attack while Kurogiri just stood there staring them down. We need to plan to get past him, Gwen said as she got a spell ready. Konako did not think that one of her bosses was in front of her, just that her classmate needed her. Ochako looked at him until she noticed something. That metal is always there when he warps someone away. She then looked down at her device and got ready. Everyone, I got a plan, Ochako called out. The students turned to her as she said, that metal part is keeping his stable. As everyone looked and noticed it as well. I will be the distraction while someone takes that out then. You, Ida, she said, turning to the boy in armor. Get past him and get us some help, she told the boy. But, he tried to say, but Mina turned to Ida. You're the only one fast enough to get help, she told him. Tenya seemed to struggle before the tension loosened. Right, Ida said as he readied himself. Okay, code input. 0 to 0 minus 1 volt, Ochako called out as around Ochako's right arm, a bright orange rocket booster formed. Take off, she called out as the rocket took off. Now Ochako had this idea that she would look epic as she flew around with the rocket booster. That was not the case. She did not control it as she was flying around aimlessly. You can do this, she thought to herself as she guided the rocket around. Konako looked at a boy draped in a full crimson suit with a navy bone-like design over the suit. He had bone-like pauldrons with red markings on them and bone-like blades over his arms. Elemental hero Necroshade. He looked back at her as they nodded at each other as she sent out a wave of ash while he sent out blades of shadows. Ochako came around as well with the rocket module. Rocket punch, ash spear, shadow blade. The three called out as the metal housing that was around Kurogiri's neck broke after the punch from Ochako dented it. The shadow blade cut it, forcing him back before the spear made from ash shot out and pierced the metal brace before she snapped her fingers. Flames traveled down the ash to the metal brace before exploding in a fireball. Kurogiri used his warp to pull in the fireball be a stream of acid sent from Mina to distract him as someone called out, Go Ida. A blast of wind hit Kurogiri as he turned to see that Tenya was at the door to head out. You will not go anywhere, he yelled as he sent his mist at the boy, only for it to be beeped up my 13. Go, kid, and get us aid, she called out. Yes, ma'am, Ida called out as he ran at his full speed to get back to UA. Kurogiri could see that Ochako was coming in for another punch, but it could fill the air. Crack, everyone turned to see that 13's suit was torn and destroyed by her quirk. No one's mental power could figure out the amount of power she was using, so everyone just froze. Today, many lost, but at least we took you out, he said before warping away. Realizing that the mist man had left them alone, they ran to the astronaut on the floor. When people ask heroes why they put their lives on the line, 13 said, everyone could see that she looked like a young woman with short, lightly colored brown hair and some lighter bangs on the top, simulating a spiral. Her dark blue eyes have rings around them, that resembling the first concepts given to depict black holes. These people only talk about the bad things that happen, she told them as she gained a smile on her tan skin. But to use all the bad that happens to us means nothing, only those we save, she told them and then fell unconscious. USJ. Central Plaza. Kurogiri formed next to the man with a hand over his face. Tamura, someone got past me and is on their way back to the school, he told him. I see, Tamura said as he watched Vlad King and Eraserhead without a care as they defeated the henchmen. What of 13, he asked the mist man. Defeated, he said. And the cubs, he asked with a sneer. I made sure that they are separated while this fight happens, Kurogiri informed him. Now it's only you three, Eraserhead called out. So do you want to give up now? or do you want to use to beast some sense into you first? Vlad asked them. Well, when you put it like that, Tamura said as he held his hands up before he snapped his fingers as the creature looked at him. Nomu, take then out, he told it. Vlad blinked in confusion as it was on him. What the? He said before getting punched into the floor. Vlad, Eraserhead called out as he ran to check on the man but was forced away with a massive swipe of Nomu's arm and sent him into a wall. Izuku and the ones sent to the flood zone had finally reached the central plaza to see that a monster was beating their teachers into the ground. Shit, Natsu said as he watched the slaughter. What do we do? Minoru asked as he watched the fight, scared out of his mind. I'll have 10 minutes of transformation, Izuku said as he watched the creature. Transformation? Pony and Natsu thought, confused. Who you are going with? Tsuyu asked him. 4 arms, Izuku told them as he activated the Omnitrix. They watched as Tamura started walking up to Eraserhead before he heard, Gekiju Shishi Ken Geki Shinjuiken, was yelled out as a golden lion head was heading for Tamura. Gekiju Shishi Ken Geki Shinjuiken, Tamura called out and punched and sent out the same attack. Before canceling each other, the energy attacks hit each other out, so the cub has come, Tamura said. Please, you are just flea-ridden, Izuku told him. The two glared at each other before they jumped at each other, glowing gold. Now, Tsuyu, Izuku yelled out as Tamura looked up to see Tsuyu jump over them to get to Eraserhead. What the? He asked. Stinko di Leone, Izuku called out as Izuku punched Tamura with a sky flame punch. He was sent flying back as Tsuyu jumped back to Izuku with their teacher. Problem child? Shota asked him. What are you doing? He continued. They plan to kill All Might, Izuku told his teacher as he turned the dial of the Omnitrix where the silhouette of the alien that he wanted. The big one? He asked as he looked at the monster. The big one, Izuku told him. Izuku then turned to look at the door with his eyes taking on an orange hint before smiling. And that's not all, Izuku said as the doors to the USJ burst open. I am here. All Might be called out as he joined the students and the 2 teachers as Vlad King pulled himself out of the floor. And I am much too pissed to care what is happening, he said as he looked at Izuku, who nodded back at him and slammed down the Omnitrix and turned into 4 arms. Nomu, take them out, Tamura called out as Nomu jumped at both teacher and student. All Might punched Nomu in the head while 4 arms drove 2 fists into their stomach. Nomu put its hands together and brought them down onto the back of All Might. But Izuku brought his fist down onto the knee of Nomu, breaking it, and the twin fist missed it as All Might bright in a right hook to the face of Nomu, and Izuku came in with a left cross with 2 fists. Vlad drove both his fists into the stomach, pushed all of his blood out, and pushed Nomu onto its back. Ah! Shota screamed out as Izuku looked at him to see Tamura with his hand on Shota's arm. Izuku jumped at the evil Shishi Ken user with his top right hand drawn back. Dule Lariat, Izuku called out, driving Tamura away from Shota and the others. Izuku, with his 4 eyes, glared down at the villain, who did the same to him as they charged each other. They went for each other as Natsu formed a wall of ice that Izuku jumped over and punched Tamura, who was sent flying into Nomu, who was sent flying by All Might. Teacher and student locked eyes and ran at each other with a fist cocked back. Tamura jumped out the way of the red fist coming his way, so Nomu got the full power of the 2 fists clashing in his stomach and back. All Might and Izuku smiled at each other as they felt they fist bumped each other. Seeing that Tamura may attack them once more, Natsu made a dome of ice around them. Sorry, Fog-san, he said to Tsuyu. Call me Tsuyu, hero, she said as she shivered, it keeps us safe. So I have to deal with it, she told him. Shit, Tamura said as he looked at the ice dome but then turned to the fight with Nomu. Just a little more, he thought. A sound then started filling the air around them. Beep. Izuku and All Might's eyes shot wide as they punched Nomu away from them. Beep beep beep, and with a flash, Izuku was turned back to his human form. This is not good, All Might said as he looked at his apprentice. Let me finish this fight, he told him. It is made to kill you, Tamura told him. All Might's eyes narrowed as he looked at Nomu and asked, what do you mean made? He asked the man. Look at his leg, Kurogiri said as Izuku then looked at the leg that he broke in shock. It's fixed, Izuku said. That's right, Tamura said as he looked happy. Nomu has two quirks: shock absorption and super regeneration, he told them. I see. The voice of Shoto Todoroki filled the air as it froze its arm of Nomu. They saw Himiko run up as a human cheetah and started to slash at Nomu with her claws, and Katsuki came down from above, placed both her hands on the neck of Nomu and exploded it. The arm encased in ice was destroyed as Katsuki jumped off and landed by Izuku and All Might. Suyu-chan, Izuku called out to the frog girl. Yes, Hiro, she asked. Me, All Might, Katsuki, Shoto-san, Izuku said before cutting off my female voice. And I will take this guys on while you guy takes the senseis to the entrance, Enba told them as she joined the fight. She then dropped into the same stance as Izuku. Shall we? She asked him. He narrowed his eyes at the girl next to him but mirrored her stance with their back next to each other. They are in sync that only a sibling should have, All Might thought as he looked at the two of them. Then his eyes widened. Both their eyes are the same shade of green, he thought as he gained a small smile. Nomu got back up as Izuku thought up a plan. Since this is an experiment and no longer human, I can use the sky flames to petrify it, he said as he looked at All Might. Katsuki saw an orange flame start forming around his fist Izuku and could see that he was getting ready for a massive attack. If we can't knock it out, Izuku said as the sky flames took the form of a lion head, then I'll turn it to stone, he said as All Might nodded his head. Come at me, monster, All Might called out to give his apprentice and the girl some time to gather their energy. Use the Juiken, Izuku told her as a golden lion head formed over his hand. Got it, she told him as the rest of the students and sensei left as the lion's head glowed brightly. Shoto-san freezes its legs, Izuku told the remaining Todoroki. Got it, Shoto said as, from his left side, ice shot out, freezing the legs of Nomu. Kachin, when it's stone, blow it up, Izuku told his lover. Yes, King, she told him as she gathered her sweat. You ready? He asked the girl next to him. Yes, brother, she told him. Brother, he asked himself before filing it away for now, Izuku called out. They both pulled their arms back and pushed forward. Stinco di Leone. Pugno del Re Bestia, Izuku yelled as he sent out his sky flames. Gekiju Shishi Ken Geki Shin Juiken, Enba called out as she sent out a Juiken. Both attacks started to merge into one blase of a mighty lion, and Tamura watched in slow motion as it hit Nomu and pushed thou him. When Izuku and Enba stopped there, attacking Nomu seemed fine as Tamura started laughing. Turn it to stone, yeah right, don't be stupid Nomu attack, he ordered the Nomu, who did not move. Nomu, I said, Tamura said before he saw that its stomach was turning gray, and it was spreading over its body. Sky flame or harmony, and I feel like that thing needs to be put out of its misery, Izuku said as the green moved to its arm. An abomination like that creature needs to be put to rest so that its soul can rest in peace, Enba added to her brother as its legs turned gray. We are heroes in training, Shoto said as its other arm turned gray. So we must stop you, Katsuki said as she jumped forward at it fully turned to stone and placed both hands on the statue and made it explode. Tamura started stretching his neck as drawing blood as he looked at the students. That Nomu was meant to kill all might not get turned to some by some cub, he growled as his eyes burned holes in the UA students. He was going to attack them as a loud bang filled the air and as a bullet made a hole in the floor in front of Tamura. They turned to look at the entrance to see all the teachers of UA standing there. Tamura today is lost, Kurogiri told the man. Fine, Tamura grouped as the purple mist formed around both of them and warped them away. All Might turned to his students and said with a dark smile, it's all safe now, but they could tell that it was hard for him not to be here to start with. UA Academy, 1A Dharm, Armartment 18. Izuku watched TV, trying to take his mind off what had transpired today. Why did they know that we were going to go to the USJ today? Izuku thought as he watched a movie, and I have a sister, he thought. But his mind was not on the film that was playing. The only way that someone could get that information would be if he thought before his eyes shot wide. UA has a mole, he said as shock dripped into his bones. Only staff and the students would have known about us going, Izuku muttered as he thought about his class in 1B. It has to be one of the students, Izuku thought as he thought about it. Is it Hagakure? Izuku thought aloud but then shook his head. No, she would not hurt a fly or, in a good conscience, hurt anyone, he felt as he moved to his kitchen. Mayageta Yuzora no Hoshidachi no Hikari, his started to ring. Hello? Izuku asked, knowing that it was Toshinori from the ringtone alone. Ah, young Midoriya, I need to speak with you, Toshinori said. Okay, what do you need? Izuku asked him. No, we need to do this in person, he said. Okay, where do you want to meet? Izuku asked him. Can you please meet me at Takoba Municipal Beach Park? Toshinori asked his apprentice. Izuku wrote a quick note before saying into the phone, sure, seen you in a bit, and then hung up. Izuku left his apartment, walked over to apartment 17 and knocked on it. Not a lot after he knocked, he heard Katsuki yell, I'll be there in a second. She then opened the door to find a serious Izuku. What is it, King? She asked him. I'm heading out for something, and I think I saw a vermilion bird flying north, Izuku said as he held out a note. She looked confused before she remembered a conversation with him when they were younger. Deku, when we both get into UA, we need a code, her younger voice ranged out her. For what, Kachin? Young Izuku asked her. If one of us finds something fishy, someone must write a note, her younger self said to him. How about they say something before handing the note, young Izuku said. Like what? The younger asked. One will say I saw a vermilion bird flying north, and the other can say, younger Izuku said and started. So the white tiger is going east, she said, finishing what the younger Izuku said in her memory. Izuku nodded his head before walking to the elevator and got in. Katsuki closed the door to her apartment and opened the note. Kachin, I believe there is a mole in UA, and they are either in our class or in 2A, was that the note said. She looked at the note in shock before her eyes hardened as she reread it. Then we must draw them out, she thought. She moved to her window to see that Izuku was now leaving the building and walking to a bus stop. Round Face must know and King's cousin as well, she said as she made her way out of her apartment into the elevator. Well, little rat, you can run, she thought as she pressed a button, but we will find you. Takoba Municipal Beach Park. Izuku walked up to the beach and spotted his mentor waiting for him while looking out at the horizon. All Might, Izuku called out. Thank you for coming, young Midoriya, All Might said as he looked at his apprentice. You can call me Izuku, Izuku said as he looked at All Might. You are dating my mother, so, he told him. Very well, Izuku, I must let you know that my time as the symbol of peace is almost over, All Might told the boy. I know I saw 13 hold up 3 fingers to Aizawa-sensei and Vlad King at the USJ, Izuku told him. Yes, I right now only have 3 hours at a time as the symbol of peace, he told Izuku, who looked down in sadness. You know what that means, Izuku, All Might said as he looked down at the boy. I have to inheart one for all now, don't I? He asked his mentor. That's right, my boy, and I have no clue what it will do to your fighting styles, All Might said as he looked angry for Izuku. From what I read, they may get weaker or stop working, Izuku said as he looked at his rings. Well, the dying will flames will, he told the man. You can say no, Izuku, All Might said as he started to deflate. He then coughed up some blood, and Izuku held up a hand and sent some sun flames. Thou All Might, I believe that just given you another 3 hours, Izuku told him. That you, Izuku, Toshinori said. I worked hard to learn how to use my flames, Izuku thought as he looked at his hands. Do I just give that up for one for all? He thought before he heard the roar of his inner lion. Are you sure? He asked the king of beasts. It responded with another roar. You're right, Izuku told him before looking at his mentor with the eyes of a king. I'll do it, he told his mentor. Toshinori looked at the boy and returned to his hero form. Are you 100% sure you want to be the next symbol of peace, Izuku Tennyson Midoriya, wielder of the Omnitrix, that you want one for all? Toshinori asked Izuku. Yes, I am, Izuku said as he looked at the man in front of him. Then all I have to say is this, Toshinori said as he pulled out a hair. Eat this, he told Izuku holding out a hair. What? Izuku asked, cocking his head to the side. They did not know they were being watched by two of Izuku's classmates in the League of Villain Spies. Or were they? A few moments ago. I'm telling you, it's impossible, Konako said as she talked with Himiko. Really, because here we are not seen as villains, freaks, monsters or test subjects, Himiko said as she looked at her hands. He will find us, Konako said as she looked at the blood drinker. Yay, but you forget that UA has all might, Himiko said as she held up one finger. UA has the smartest being on the plant as its principal. She held up another finger. UA is helping us be us, not a person who try to act normal or uses her ash to blind someone, she finished. Konako was quiet for a second as she looked out at the sky. Do I want to save people? She asked herself. She thought back at what happened at the USJ and remembered how she fought beside Gwen and Cage against Kurogiri. And it felt good. You're right, and I know that it felt good being a hero, but remember, the League is watching us, she told her fellow former spy. We could still be spies, now, Himiko said as she got a happy look. What? Konako asked her. I mean, we could be spies for UA in the League, and when the time is right, we tell them everything we know, Himiko said as she looked rising with what she was saying. Everything, Kanako said, shocked. Yes, everything, Tamura, the League of Villains, Yuga Aoyama being a spy for all for one, and why we were here originally, Himiko said as she looked at the white-haired girl. And if we are expelled, she asked Himiko. Then we find another way to be heroes, Himiko said with her usual smile. Not the smile that she wore in class, but a slightly crazy smile showing her fangs. You're right, we are heroes in training, and we will end the League of Villains, Konako said as they both made their way to the beach. When they reached the beach, they found All Might talking to the class rep, Izuku Midoriya. The young lion that made Tamura Shigaraki angry. Thank you for coming, young Midoriya, All Might said as he looked at his apprentice. You can call me Izuku, Izuku said as he looked at All Might. I mean, you are dating my mother, so, he told, shocking both girls. All Might is dating Midoriya's mother, they thought as they hid. Very well, Izuku, I must let you know that my time as the symbol of peace is almost over, All Might told the boy. I know I saw 13 hold up 3 fingers to Aizawa-sensei and Vlad King at the USJ, Izuku told him. Yes, I right now only have 3 hours at a time as the symbol of peace, he told Izuku, who looked down in sadness. You know what that means, Izuku, All Might said as he looked down at the boy. He doesn't mean, both girls thought as they looked at the Sean in front of them. I have to inheart one for all now, don't I? He asked his mentor. That's right, my boy, and I have no clue what it will do to your fighting styles, All Might said as he looked angry for Izuku. From what I read, they may get weaker or stop working, Izuku said as he looked at his rings. Well, the dying will flames will, he told the man. You can say no, Izuku, All Might said as he started to deflate. So is what All Might looks like, Himiko thought. They then saw him cough up some blood, and Izuku held up a hand and sent some yellow flames. Thou All Might, I believe that just given you another 3 hours, Izuku told him. That you, Izuku, All Might said as Izuku looked deep in thought before he looked at All Might with an intense look. I'll do it, he told his mentor. All Might looked at the boy and returned to his hero form. Are you 100% sure you want to be the next symbol of peace, Izuku Tennyson Midoriya, wielder of the Omnitrix, that you want one for all Might asked Izuku. Yes, I am, Izuku said as he looked at the man in front of him. Then all I have to say is this, All Might said as he pulled out a hair. What's he doing? Konako asked herself. Eat this, All Might told Izuku holding out a hair. What? Izuku asked cocking his head to the side. Izuku looked at All Might as he held a hair out. So to get one for all, I have to eat that hair, Izuku asked him. That's right, All Might said with a nod. Izuku stared at the hair for a bit before giving in and eating the hair. Now we have to wait for it to be, All Might said before getting cut off by the Omnitrix flashing. It started to glow then as it changed form. The faceplate was moving from a round face to a square one, and it now had a white, green, and black color scheme. The hourglass on the faceplate had even changed, with it being black, with 2 green stripes forming an outline for the hourglass. What the? they both asked as they looked at the Omnitrix in shock. DNA alteration in progress. Did you mean for this? The Omnitrix seemed to ask. Yes, he said to it as he looked at All Might, who shrugged his shoulders. Then allowing Izuku Midoriya limited access to the powers of One for All, the Omnitrix said aid as the voice seemed to be that of Izuku, but it appeared synthetic. Anything else? Izuku asked aloud, not really wanting an answer. New transformations have been unlocked to match with each of the powers of One for All. User Izuku Midoriya has kept the powers of Dying Wolf Flames. User Izuku Midoriya can use all the powers of One for All separately, the Omnitrix responded. What are my 7 new transformations? Izuku asked the watch. One for All altogether has unlocked Celestial Sapien DNA, the watch said, showing a green-tinted hologram of a humanoid alien that seemed to have stared in its body with the Omnitrix dial on the chest. Energy Transfer has unlocked Conductoid DNA, the next hologram of a slender humanoid alien, one eye in the middle of its head, 2 antennae, a tail with round plugs on its tips, 4-fingered hands, and feet with only 2 front toes with the Omnitrix dial on the chest. Family Stockpile has unlocked Otsutsuki DNA, the Omnitrix said as the next picture is of someone who looked like a human male with shaggy white hair and attractive facial features and 6 Magatama designs tattooed on his collarbones to resemble a necklace. Had a pair of horn-like protrusions extending from either side of his forehead. He was dressed in an elegant, slim-cut, white long-sleeved tailcoat and an oversized collar that folded back upon itself over his bare muscular torso, over a pair of baggy black pants that often covered his bare feet. The dial of the Omnitrix is on the chest. Charge has unlocked Nosedenian DNA. The alien's appearance is similar to an Earth-dry cell. Its body is black, with a large lightning bolt-like stripe spanning from where its neck starts to where its legs start on its front and back sides, and a positive symbol and negative symbol on its back, with the dial of the Omnitrix, sealed to be on the head. Lover's Bond has unlocked War Greymonster, War Greymon DNA. The next hologram is of a reptilian alien with a humanoid body structure. Its face is covered in metal, with 1 spike on its nose, 2 spikes behind its eyes, and spiky hair on the back of its head. The shin guards, cuirass, and spiked shoulder pads it wears are held in place by thick, cable-like ropes. It has 2 large, 3-clawed gauntlets in its hands. A shield that it carries on its back is emblazoned with the Omnitrix symbol. The dial of the Omnitrix is on the chest. Strength of Hercules has unlocked Vaxasaurian DNA. The next hologram was of a somewhat humanoid dinosaur. The plates on its chest ended in spikes, and he had points above its eyes and across its chest, going from his right shoulder to the left side of his lower back, containing the Omnitrix dial. All Night Long has unlocked Pripyatogen DNA, the Omnides said as it showed a robotic humanoid with large cylinders on his arms near his wrists with bubble-like spheres. It also has an Omnitrix-shaped chest. His head is a pointed, armored helmet, and it is also mouthless with the Omnitrix dial on its belt. Speed Boost has unlocked Citricaia DNA. The Omnitrix showed a feline-like alien with mask-like fins around its eyes, a triangle-shaped nose, and a thunderbolt-like design down its chest, and a triangle one down its back. It also has spike-like blades on his arms and legs. This alien wears the Omnides dial on his chest. Multitasking has unlocked Sonorosian DNA. The next hologram is a humanoid. One of its most noticeable features is a square appendage resembling an MP3 player behind his back with a port, decorated with a 10 symbol and cassette tapes on its lower legs. The green circle-shaped indents on the back of its hands are sound holes. The headphones are attached to a backpack. It also had the Omnitrix dial on his chest. Fa Jin has unlocked Saiyan DNA, the Omnitrix said as it showed a humanoid male. He is a tall man of muscular build. His hair is unkempt, with 3 bangs hanging to the right of his forehead and 2 hanging to the left. His hair stands up in the front with 5 spikes and 4 in the back. Long and prehensile tail with fur. He was in loose gi, with kanji on the front left of his shirt, secured together with an obi tied in a knot at the left of his waist. He also wore wristbands that cover nearly his entire forearms and blue boots that clasp together on the front of his shins. Danger Sense has unlocked Absol DNA, the Omnitrix said as the hologram became a quadrupedal, mammalian alien covered in fur. It has a ruff around its neck and chest and a tuft on its head adorned with a single oval. Between the dark skin, the curvature of the fur on its head, and the positioning of its horn, its face vaguely resembles a wu-wei symbol. It has a feline face with an almond-shaped, scythe-like tail and a crescent-shaped horn on the side of its head. Its broad feet are equipped with 3 claws each, and claw-like spikes protrude from the heels of its hind legs and the elbows of its front legs. It has the Omnitrix dial on a collar. Blackwhip has unlocked Arachnochimp DNA. The next hologram is of a monkey-like alien with 4 arms, 2 legs, 3 fingers on each hand and 3 toes on each foot, blue fur over a dark blue center, and a tail with 2 stripes near the tip. Smokescreen has unlocked Gengar DNA, the Omnitrix said as it showed a hologram of a bipedal alien with a roundish body. It has a wide mouth curled into a sinister grin and pointed ears. On its back are numerous spikes, and it has smaller spikes on top of its head, similar to tufty fur. Its arms and legs are short, with 3 digits on both its hands and feet. It also has a stubby tail. The dial of the Omnitrix is on the back of its head. Float has unlocked Amphibian DNA, the Omnitrix told them as it showed a hologram of a humanoid manta ray-like alien with horns from its nose, gills and patagia underneath its arms with the Omnitrix symbol on the chest. "Well, that happened," All Might said as he scratched his head. "Well, let's start training you in your new forms," he said as Izuku nodded his head. Before they could train they both heard an explosion, so he turned to Izuku and said, "Another time then," before jumping off. UA Academy, 1A dorm, apartment 20. So Izuku wrote this, Gwen asked as she sat in her apartment with both Katsuki and Ochako as she held up a note. "Yay, he was heading out somewhere, and he handed that note to me," Katsuki said to the redhead. "There is a mole with UA, and possibly they are in 1A or B, Gwen read from the letter. "Toru is not the mole as she is not the type to do that," she continued reading. "That's right, and if it was one of the students, that means that it's one of 51 people that could have ratted us out," Ochako said as she thought back to the attack earlier in the day. "Let's try to eliminate some of them," Katsuki asked the 2 of them. "What type of eliminating?" Gwen asked the bomb Korik. "Well, we are training to be space police, so questioning," Katsuki answered. "We've been told that we have a week off, so let's each take a person from our class and question them," Ochako started as the other clocked on. "And try to find out who the spy is," Gwen finished as she locked eyes and sent a god at thou their eyes. The next day, Class 1A dorm basement, Izuku lab. Izuku looked at the new form of the Omnitrix on his wrist as he pressed the flat head of the watch, as the screen sank in a dial form showing a hologram of 4 arms before he pressed one of the buttons on the side as the slat face returned. Life is never easy, Izuku thought as he turned back to his workstation. On it was a blue missile launcher that would be fitted to the right leg that was holding 5 missiles. It was hooked up to a computer as Izuku looked at the lines of code. The need for a targeting system is getting more and more needed as the ideas from, he muttered as he typed as he heard the door of his lab open. "Hey Deku King," both Ochako and Katsuki called to the teen at the computer. "Kachin, Venus, how are you?" Izuku asked them as they walked over to him. "Is that the next module?" Ochako asked as she looked at the boot on the workstation. "We're fine. We just come to see how you are," Katsuki said as she sat on a swivel chair. "How are you?" she asked him. "I'm good, and yes, Venus, that is the next module," Izuku said as he walked over to Ochako's hero suit and took the helmet and examined it. "Module 2, Launcher," he said as he walked back to the computer with the helmet. "What are you doing with my helmet?" Ochako asked as Izuku looked over his tools. "I'm going to place a targeting system in your helmet so that the missiles shot from the launcher hit what you aim for and not the person behind them," Izuku said as she paled at that. "What ammunition are you giving her?" Katsuki asked as she looked at the other end of the room to see missile casings. "Well, there are standard missiles, foam missiles, liquid nitrogen missiles, and more ideas in the wings," Izuku said as he took the visor off, put headphones on the desk, and took the microphone off it. "Ever the Thinker King," Katsuki said as she shook her head. Izuku started to work and slowly incorporated the headphones into the helmet. Izuku then started to add another visor to the helmet and something like a mouthguard. He continued typing on the computer, Now that the programming, Izuku said as he started to add a targeting system as he downloaded the data into the helmet. And done, Izuku said as he put the helmet back on the mannequin dummy and then turned to Ochako. Now, let's test this out, Izuku said to her. Okay, she said as she pressed 0 to 0-0 volt and changed into her hero suit. All three walked out of the lab and made their way to the firing range. Now put in the code 0 to 0-2 volt, Izuku told Ochako, who nodded her head and did as asked as the launcher formed on her right leg. Ochako could see that visor gained 5 rings that floated around her right eye. To lock on to a target, you have to call out, "Target lock," Izuku told her as she nodded her head. Izuku pressed a few keys on the box next to him as cardboard cutouts came out of the floor and looked at Ochako in waiting. "Target lock," she called out as the rings moved to each cardboard cut. "Now apply Preacher with your heel, and it will fire the missiles," Izuku told her. Her eyes became sharp as she steadied herself, applied Preacher to her heel, and sent all 5 of the missiles off. She was sent off balance and sent flat on her ass, as the missiles flew through the end, hit the targets and exploded. "I'm going to need to add a stabilizer into her suit when using Module 2, Launcher," Izuku said as Katsuki helped Okacho up. "I wonder if you can make them less powerful," Katsuki asked as Okacho was firmly on her feet. "I have thought about that, but then they do not fly as fast or as far," Izuku told them. Ochako looked down at the launcher on her leg to see that it was empty. "Is it only 5 shots per ruse?" she asked him. "No," Izuku said as he shook his head as he turned to her. "Say into the mic, reload," Izuku told her. "Reload," Ochako called out as a shutter closed over the missile points, and after a few seconds, it reopened to show that it had 5 new rockets. "You'll need to train to hold your ground when firing," Katsuki told Ochako as 5 new cardboard cutouts popped out of the ground. "Got it," Ochako said as she gained a face of focus. Katsuki turned to see that Izuku had walked over to the mediation area and had sat down. "What is he doing?" Katsuki asked herself. Izuku had entered a meditation state as he could hear his lion spirit roaring within him. "I need more than just you," he told the lion within him. In his mind's eye, he could see a significant form of an ape, a gorilla to be exact. His body started to give off crimson energy as his muscles grew to the size of All Might in his hero form from cloud flame being poured into them. Izuku opened his eye to look at his arms and moved his arms to flex his muscles, and the cloud flame starts to filter out of his body. "What am I doing wrong?" Izuku asked himself as he tried once more, and it did not work. "What are you doing?" Katsuki asked as an explosion sounded off in the background from Ochako, who had managed not to fall over this time but was still knocked off balance. "Trying to get a new fighting style," Izuku told her. "What is this one called?" Katsuki asked as she walked up to him. "Gekiju Gorira Ken," Izuku told her as he tried once more, and his body stayed bulky. "And it stayed for a couple of minutes, and I need to get the right mix of Gorilla Geki and Cloud Flames," Izuku said as he finished deflating. They Bok turned back to Ochako to see that she was getting better and better at firing off missiles. "What do you mean that you need the right mix?" she asked him. "When using Shishiken and Sky Flame, the mix has to use a 60 to 40 Geki and Sky Flame," he told her as he tried to bulk out once more but deflated right away. "So I need the right mix of the two, and so far, I have tried 50 to 50, 90-10, and 12 to 88, he continued. "Have you tried a 30 to 70, she asked him. He looked at her before calling out 30% of Geki of Gorira Ken and then began to call out 70% of Cloud Flames. And his body grew as his muscles bulged out, and he stayed that way. "Thanks," he said to her. UA. Dorm. Room 22. Himiko and Konako were both sitting at a table in Himiko's dorm room. "How are we going to do this?" Himiko asked Konako. "I don't know at all," she said as she lifted the cup in her hand. "Midoriya is trying to help us," she started. "We want to be heroes now," Himiko finished as she took a sip of her drink before her eyes gained a spark in it. "So why don't we continue to be spies?" she said as Konako looked confused. "And spy on who?" Konako asked the blood drinker. "We spy on Shigaraki and feed them to the police when we get the chance," Himiko said as she gained a 1000-watt smile. And it can help us rejoin the world and become heroes, Konako said with a small smile. Now, all we have to do is, Himiko started. Is make a plan, Konako finished as they clicked their cups together. Room 1. Yuga Aoyama was not having as much fun as the other two people in the League of Villains. He was looking around his room that held his parents' phones that had shown him looking happy. But his journey down memory lane turned dark as his parents went to a man that could give him a quirk. The quirk was one that he could not control well as he needed his belt to use it. And he had told them that he wanted nothing from them. All lies. When that man had found out that All Might was becoming a teacher, he had come to the family and told them that he needed something from them, and if they did not aid him, he would take his quirk back. So he was forced into being a spy. He had thought that he could just do this job quickly and have All Might killed so that he could be a hero without anyone knowing. But he then started to get attached to his classmates. Please forgive me, everyone, Yuga said as he sobbed. He looked at the picture of his family. But my family need me, he said, but he could not do anything. And so, he returned to the cycle of descent as he constantly thought about what he would do. UA Academy, Nezu's office. Toshinari, Sekijiro and Shota were both sitting in front of Nezu, who was looking over the tapes of the USJ and looking over them to see if they could find out what had happened all over the USJ. I have to say that they all put up a great fight, Nezu said as he looked at the footage. Young Bakugo did well in the ruin zone, Toshinori said as Shota begrudgingly nodded his head. You're right, as she did some good, Shota muttered. Then the group aided 13, Sekijiro said as he looked at another monitor. You're right, and while it was about to Risu mainly, it worked nicely in my class, Toshinori said as Nezu looked at them all. Have anyone spotted the lost two students? Nezu asked them. You mean Aoyama and Hagakure? Vlad King asked as he looked at the recordings. Yes, Nezu replied before his face became serious. I think that's someone within the classes of 1A or 1B, he told them as Toshinori turned to Nezu. I don't think that young Hagakure is a spy, Toshinori told Nezu, shocking the two homeroom teachers. What makes you say that? Shota asked the symbol of peace. When I gave young Midoriya one for all, he gained the quirks of the past users and the other quirks that one for all ate, Toshinori told them. What quirks? Shota asked him. Energy transfer that allows him to transfer one for all to another person, or from what we have found out, he can transfer energy into a person that can boost someone's quirk or awaken one. Toshinori told them, this is the quirk of the first user and creator of One for All, Yoichi Shigaraki, All Might told them. Now wait a second, Shigaraki, Shota asked, thinking about the man that was the vanguard of the attack on the USJ. I think that he could be a descendant of his brother All for One, All Might told him. Awaken a quirk? Nezu asked them to get away from the dark topic. Yes, it turns out that everyone has a dormant quirk, and of mine, Toshinori said as he shifted into his hero form much easier. My awakened quirk is called Power Up, and it allows me to send energy to my muscles to make me stronger and faster, he told them. What is the next quirk? Nezu asked him. The next quirk is called Family Stockpile that stockpiles energy as well as quirks for the user, Toshinori said as the other looked pleased with the information. Did the Omnitrix add anything to this? Shota asked him. Yes, it has given him access to all the quirks, some new transformations and him keeping the Dying Will Flames, Toshinori said as the others looked confused. Keep the Dying Will Flames? Sekijiro asked him. Yes. The Dying Will Flames can only be used by someone that is quirkless, Toshinori said as he deflated. The next quirk is called Charge, and as its name indicates, it allows the user to charge energy within their body, he continued as Nezu nodded his head. Does this one help him with awakening quirks? Shota asked him. That's right, Toshinori said before moving on. Lover's Bond is the next quirk that he has unlocked, and we have next to no clue on what it can do, he told them as they looked confused. You have no clue? Shota asked him, shocked. I may have been the 8th user of One for All, but that does mean that it can sometimes still surprise me, Toshinori told the iQuirk teacher. Well, that's one thing that we need to help him with, Nezu said as he noted. What's the next one? He asked the number 1 hero. It is called Strength of Hercules, and it boosts strength into the arms or furious blows via the fists, Toshinori told the three of them. Now that is a strong quirk, Shota said as Nezu nodded his head. And to think that we are not at the second user yet, Sekijiro said as he drew realization from the homeroom teacher of Class 1A. You're right, Eraserhead said as he gave a nod to Toshinori to continue. All night long is the next quirk that allows the user boosts energy to stamina, Toshinori said as Vlad King looked on in amazement. So is now a stamina freak, he asked jokingly. That's right, Toshinori answered before continuing. The next quirk speed boost, this one is like strength of Hercules and all night long, but this one sends the energy to the legs and speed, Toshinori told them, and they were the original quirks that were within one for all before given to the second user, Toshinori told them. I see, Nezu said as he wrote them down. Okay, let's move on to the second user, Shota said as he felt happy about the first user's madness. The quirk of the second user is called multitasking, which allows the user, Kenkani, to split their focus for on multiple tacts up to 5 tacts, he told them. How did you train that? Nezu asked him. I had young Midoriya listen to the radio, watch a film and fight simultaneously, Toshinori told them. Did it work? Sekijiro asked him. Yes, as it had found out that 3 tasks he can split the focus for half an hour, he told them. That is some good info, Shota said. Indeed, that is right, but alas, the next quirk is called Fa Jin, which belonged to Tadakaizen Jutsu, who was the third user and allows the user to gather kinetic energy by repeating regular motions and store it for later use, Toshinori told them. So a kung fu quirk? Shota asked Nezu. That's right, he said before turning to Toshinori with a thinking look. How does this work with his Shishiken? He asked the symbol of peace. Well, what he did a Juiken, it was 100 times stronger than a normal Juiken, he told them, shocking them. That is bullshit, Shota said. Quoting young Midoriya, quirks are bullshit, Toshinori told them as they nodded their heads. The next quirk is from the fourth user, Hikage Shinomori, that is called Danger Sense, he told them as they looked at him as if ready to explain the quirk. What? He asked them. What does Danger Sense do? Vlad King asked him. As said on the tin as they say in America, Toshinori told them. So it allows him to sense danger around him, Shota asked him. Only to those that want to harm him, Toshinori told them. The next quirk belongs to the fifth user, Daigoro Banjo or the former pro hero Lariat, and it is called Black Whip that lets the user the ability to produce energy tendrils from any part of their body and command them at will, he told them before continuing, but if the user not fully in control of their emotions it makes this uncontrollable. It's not the worst quirk to have, but he must learn to have emotional training to help him, Shota muttered as Nezu nodded. You're right, it's important, Nezu agreed with the hobo-looking man. Toshinori nodded his head as he pulled out his small book and started to add some information to it. Form the sixth user and Kemuriroku, Toshinori began before getting cut off by Shota. The underground hero legend, Shota asked him. The one and the same, and his quirk called Smokescreen, and it allows the user to generate a thick cloud of smoke from their body, but it does not work with the rain, All Might said as the others nodded their heads, and the final quirk is from my master the seventh user, Nana Shimura, and it is named Float that allows the user to fly, he told them all. Is there any way to train him? Shota asked him. I think that the only way to do that is to call my old teacher, Toshinori said as he started to shake before he gathered his nerve, and Izuku has told me something, he told them. And what is that? Nezu asked the number 1 hero. We can remove Toru Hagakure from the list, he told his boss. What do you mean? Shota asked him. The Sky's Flames has an ability called Hyper Instinct, and Danger Sense has boosted it, and when Toru Hagakure passed Izuku, he said as the others readied himself, he felt that she knew who the spy was, but she wanted to bring them to light herself, he continued. So that means that we have gone from 56 taking out Midoriya and Hagakure, that leaves 54 people about this, Nezu said as he looked over the student application. At least we have 2 less people that we know are not the spy, Shota said as he returned his eyes to the cameras. And I hate to say this, but, Sekijiro started as Nezu looked at him with a nod. Okay, then I'll tell Hound Dog, he nodded his head. As he left, the 3 other teachers looked at each other and sent a message to each other through their eyes. The hunt for the rat was on. Class 1A dorm basement, Izuku lab. Izuku was back in his lab as he worked on some metal-armored boots on the workbench. So these boosts will aid you in flying? Katsuki asked as the sound of explosions sounded off in the background. Yes, they can, he said as he looked and started to wire it up. They just need something to act as a power supply, Izuku told her. Izuku then added a moor to the outside of the boots, lifted them off the workbench, carried them over to his computer, and put some wires and cables into the boots. And why is that? Katsuki asked him. Should I tell her? Izuku thought as his brain supplied him with all the memories that they have had together and all that they have done. I have a quirk now, he told her. What are you? She was saying before Izuku started to float before setting himself back down on the floor. But I thought that you were quirkless, she asked him as she looked at him with shock. Did he never show me his quirk? She asked herself. All Might had this quirk before me, he told her. What do you mean? She asked him, and All Might could not fly. She thought before something came to her. Your watch, she said. That's right, the Omnitrix has allowed me to use all the quirks within One for All, he told her. So your quirk is called One for All, she asked him. That's right, and from what I know of the previous users, the flying quirk belonged to All Might's master, Nana Shimura, Izuku told her as she looked shocked. So then why are you making these boosts? Katsuki asked him as he started to typing on a keyboard. To aid me, he said as he could see that the code was going to take some time to make. I cannot make myself any faster in the air, and I have also got an abundance of energy, he continued as he started to make the code for the boot. One arm reached over to something next to him that looked heavy, and he lifted it without any problem. I'm 3 times as strong as normal and 3 times as fast, he said as she could see that if fingers were moving extremely fast, I can also transfer energy that can awaken the quirk gene, he told her as Katsuki could tell that he was not done yet. Hey you too, Ochako said as she walked in to see that there were some metal boots next to the computer. Are they for me as well? She asked him. Izuku chuckled as she looked cutely at him. No, they are mine, Izuku said as he continued typing. But when he saw her walk in, he slowed his typing down. Oh, what they for? She asked him. To give me an edge with the flying villains, Izuku said as Ohako cocked her head to the side. Don't you have a flying transformation? She asked him. Stinkfly? Yay, but I'm going to need something when the Omnitrix is recharging, he told her and looked over the code. Oh, that's a good idea, Ochako said as she looked at the boots. But saying that, I have another thing for you, he said as he turned to another screen and typed in a few keys as a picture of yellow housing with a drill. This is Module 3. Drill, Izuku said as she walked over to the screen. It will form on your left leg, he told her as he moved his chair over to her, and it can even drill thou diamond, he told her as she looked as her eyes were wide. And after I'm done with the code on my boots, I'll get to work on your next module, he told them. No, take your time, Ochako told him as she waved her hands back and forth. Ha 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 ha. Izuku laughed at the bright face of Ochako as she looked away from them as they were knowingly being watched. Milky Way Galaxy, Umbra System, Xenon. On a planet overgrown by plant life that seemed to give the planet a green glow, someone was watching a screen within a cave. That someone was a small fog-like alien that resembled Izuku's from gray matter. But he looked older. So you're the one that has my Omnitrix, he said as he stroked his whiskers. He looked at the screen to show that Wilder of the Omnitrix was making a moor. He aspires to be a hero, he muttered as he looked at the 2 women. One of them is the powers of explosions, he said as he looked at the visual of the woman with cream blonde hair, while the other has the power to make things unaffected by gravity, he continued as his eyes turned to girl that can make this float. So did you get my message? The Omnitrix wielder said, shocking the Gaven. Did he know I was watching? He asked himself as he watched the girl's turn to face the human male. Yay, and we have to tell you to know that it's going to be hard to find out who the spy is, the gravity girl said as she put her hand to her chin. Your cousin has started to brew a potion that can force people to tell the truth, the explosive girl said as both other humans nodded their heads, but she did say that it will take months to make, she continued. Okay then. The Omnitrix wielder said as the Galvan saw that he was typing on some keys as another picture showed up. This one was a rectangular device. This is Module 4. Radar, he said as both females looked interested. Now, when Dill is done, I'll start working on this, he told them. What can it do? The gravity girl asked him. It will to detect any enemies that are not visible and reflect certain waves, like say telephone call, as well as make contact with the Omnitrix, he told her. So that when this is built, we can track outgoing phone calls, the bomb girl asked him. That right, but, the Omnitrix user said as he looked at the parts in his workshop, it's going to take a while for the parts to arrive as the plumbers and the supply companies are sending the next shipment in a few days, he told them. Interesting, he has made the Dijun for that, and I can get the shipment to him faster, the Galvan thought as he looked at the teenager on the screen, but I want to know how his body has changed and how he has gotten the new Omnitrix and has merged it with the prototype, he thought as he pressed a couple of keys to see that was going on with the team. Everything looks normal, but then, he said before his eyes looked at the power spectrum of the team, if he was to activate the full power of that quirk, he could rival a Celestial Sapin before they got bored, the alien said as he looked at he typed on more keys. His first quirk allows him to transfer the power of the quirk or some power to awaken the quirk gene within people, he said as he looked at the data on the screen. His next one allows him to gather energy from around him and store it within him, and that included the quirks of the other users, he said as he could see that the energy was flowing to his muscles, the whole of his arms and legs. Then there is the one where he can have the strength of a Vaxasaurian but does not shorten the brain power of the user, he said as he then looked at the power that traveled to the limbs of the Omnitrix user. His speed has increased to allow him the speed of a Citricaia, but not only the legs but the arms and fingers as well, he said as he started to input more data. Then there is the quirk that allows him to constantly reuse his energy, allowing him to work straight for 24 hours, he said as he noted that the energy seemed to form an aura around him. Then there is the quirk that allows him to give his energy to others and give them a small boost to their power, he muttered. Of course, then there is the one that allows him to split his attention, he continued as he saw something else affecting the body of the team. He can also store energy within him, and he has an early danger system, he said as he looked. He can then use his energy to form tethers or robes to aid him in battle, he said as he looked at the hands of the teen and could find microscopic slits in the knuckles. Then there is the quirk that allows the user to glands that have the power of secretion of smoke to act as a defense mechanism and so that they can run away, he said as he looked at more microscopic holes that the user of his Omnitrix had. And his final power allows him to fly or, as they say, float, he said as he looked at more data. Izuku Tennyson Midoriya, you are training to be a hero, the alien said as he looked at the screen as it swapped back to show Izuku soldering wires. Can you prove that the universe is worth saving or not? He said as he turned the screen off. The next day, Class 1A dorm basement. Now, Izuku, we are going to have you transform into one of your new forms, Toshinori said to Izuku as he was in his bulked up form in the basement training area. Which one should I start with? Izuku asked his mentor. Start with the one that had been unlocked by the quirks within One for All and then One for All, Toshinori told him. Okay, Izuku said as he activated the Omnitrix and turned the dial to the hologram to a Cyclops with two long antennae and a tail. Izuku then pressed the dial in and started to transform. The Omnitrix dug into his arm as his body turned jet black and gold battery bolts formed out of his shoulders, arms, and hips. His pinky finger sank back into his hand as on the tips of the remaining fingers, 4 round golden plug sockets formed and 2 antennae shot out of his head with golden plugs on the end like the tail that shot out of the base of his spike as he grew to the size of All Might. His feet became two-toed as his eyes merged into one single eye in the middle of his head. Feedback, he yelled as his transformation was finished. Did you do like you did before or? Toshinori asked him, but Izuku shook his head. No. Something just told me that they would name themselves, he told the number 1 hero. So what is this guy doing? Toshinori asked his apprentice. Well, from what I know, conductoids can absorb and redirect energy attacks, Izuku said as he sent his antennae to attach to a large battery. He could feel that he was taking the energy from within the battery and made sure that there was nothing left within the battery. Izuku pointed his hands forward and sent beams of blue lightning from his fingers. Toshinori watched as the beams of energy hit a target that he had placed. What else can you do with this, the energy that you absorb? He asked the teen. Izuku drained another battery and started to do some punches, and his fists seemed to give off lighting as he punched contact with a sandbag. "So you can send out energy with your punches?" Toshinori asked him as he watched his student. "It seems like it," he said as he looked at his hands. "How's the new quirk?" he asked the teacher. "It works like a dream, and it is also slowing down the descent of one for all from my body," the hero said to the conductoid. "That's good to hear," he said as he ran out of lighting. And then, for the rest of the time, he, as feedback Izuku, drained batteries and got the powers of this alien down to pat before he was turned back to human. "Let's do some training with one of your new quirks," Toshinori said as he pulled out his small book. "Energy transfer is a good start," he said as the Need nodded his head before turning to All Might and asked. "How do I train a quirk that can transfer energy and quirks?" he asked the man. "I don't know," he said with a shrug. As Izuku face-palmed, he was sure that he could hear something from within his head. Like a woman sighing. 10 minuets later. "So the next transformation," All Might said as they could see that the Omnitrix went from a red hourglass to green. "Understood," Izuku said as he activated the Omnitrix and tuned to the hologram of a human with a third eye. And then pressed the core in. As the Omnitrix dug into his arm, his clothes changed to an elegant, slim-cut, white long-sleeved tailcoat and an oversized collar that folded back upon itself over his bare muscular torso, over a pair of baggy black pants that often covered his bare feet. His eyes became a pale lavender as another eye opened on his forehead, and it was red with concentric circles with 9-tone. His skin became pale as 6 Magatama designs tattooed on his collarbones to resemble a necklace formed on his neck, and his hair turned pale white and shaggy as if horns grew out of his head from either side of his forehead. Under his clothes the Omnitrix dial formed on his chest as he called out, "Dotara." Toshinori looked around the transformation before saying, "This guy looks human." The Otsutsuki were a race that evolved similarly to humans, but they have an inner energy called chakra, Dotara told the hero as he grew accustomed to looking at his teacher with 3 eyes, "and I think that I can merge from what I have learned with snow flames can be put into this form," he continued. "Anything else?" Toshinori asked. Izuku did not say anything, but the transformation did tell him something as the veins around his eyes bulged out. "What the?" Toshinori asked as he could see the vein bulge. "My vision has now improved a lot, not to mention I now have an almost 360 view," Izuku said as he looked at the teacher and started seeing him. "An X-ray vision," Izuku added. "So what can this chakra do?" Toshinori asked the teen. "A lot of things," he said. "We train now as you have 9 minutes left of that transformation, so let us get this going," he said as they began to train. 21 minuets later. "Now on to the next one," Toshinori said while nursing an arm. "Got it, All Might, and sorry about the arm," Izuku said as he activated the Omnitrix once more. He then turned to the next of his following transformations as it showed a battery-like alien. "Oh, it's one of them," Izuku said as he looked at the hologram. "What race are they?" Toshinori asked him. "Nosedenian, or as they are more commonly known, Megawatt, and they are hyperactive little buggers," Izuku told his teacher. "But your mind has never changed before?" All Might asked. "What about Gorst Freak?" Izuku asked him. Toshinori had nothing to say about that as he looked at the teen. "You have a good point. So what should I expect?" he asked the Omnitrix wielder. "A hyperactive and mischievous child," Izuku told him as he pressed the dial in. The Omnitrix sank into his arm as his skin turned black as 4 bolts grew out of his arms, 2 for each arm as he started to shrink as his body became like that of a dry cell battery, albeit rounded out. On his chest, a large jungle green lightning bolt-like stripe spanning from his neck starts to his waist on his front and back sides, and positive plus and negative symbols on his back. A hole forms on his head as lightning starts to crackle within his body, and the dial form on his head. "Buzzsaw!" he yelled with a robotic version of his voice. Izuku looked at Toshinori. Toshinori looked back. A large smile formed on the now-named Buzzshick's face. "Oh no," Toshinori said as Izuku zipped off. 30 minuets later. "Now for the next 4, All Might said as his hair stood on end. "Got it, and sorry," Izuku said as he looked at his idol. "It's okay," Toshinori said as I really hate that transformation," he thought as he thought back to Buzzsaw electrocuting him. Izuku said nothing as he turned to the hologram that they dressed in Amur. As the Omnitrix burrowed into his as his skin turned orange as his hands became four-fingered claws, his body became reptilian, and his head became reptilian as a gray metal helmet formed that had one spike on its nose, two spikes behind its eyes, and spiky red hair on the back of its head. Over his body, Amur formed as the shin guards, cuirass, and spiked shoulder pads it wears is held in place by thick, black cable-like ropes. A metal jungle green octagon formed on his back of it was the symbol of the Omnitrix before it opened, and metal jungle green had two large, three-clawed gauntlets in its hands. "Warg," he yelled. "This guy looks strong," All Might said as he walked around the lizard. Warg is from the race called War Grey Monster, and they are the most courageous race in all of the Milky Way, Izuku told the heroics teacher. This shocked the number one hero. "Really?" he asked the War Grey Monster. "Yep," Izuku said as he gave a nod as a fireball formed in his hands. "Now let's get to training," he said. 30 minuets later, the training room bow had scorch marks all over the place from the training that Izuku had done with his new transformation. "Well done, now that your watch is recharged, it's time for the next transformation," All Might said. "Understood," Izuku said as he turned the watch until he turned to the dinosaur alien hologram. And pressed the core in. The Omnitrix dug its way out his arm as his skin became leathery and became brown in color. He grew about 12 feet tall as plates grew on his chest and ended in spikes, and he had spikes above his eyes. A tail burst out of his tailbone as his clothes changed to a green and a black sash across his chest, going from his right shoulder to the left side of his lower back containing the Omnitrix dial. "Humangosaur," he bellowed out to the sky with his arms spread out. "This is a big boy," Toshinori said as he looked up at the alien. "Yay, and I can get even bigger," Izuku responded as the plates on his body shifted as he grew in size. "How strong is he?" Toshinori asked the teen-turned dino alien. "Vaxosaurians are the strongest race in the Milky Way, and they can lift a Tokastar," Izuku said as he looked down at All Might. "A what?" he asked the large alien. "A Tokastar is a large alien that are the size of buildings and can shoot comic beams," Izuku said as Toshinori nodded his head. He then pressed a button as large targets popped out of the floor. "Let's train with this guy," he said as Izuku nodded his head. 28 minuets later. "Now, onto the next transformation," Toshinori said as he was now sporting some new bruises, and to think that him using the power of one part of One for All, he thought as he could feel some broken bones. Izuku's skin turned into a glowing sea-thou green as his bones were seen to be turned pure black as robotic Amur formed over his body as around his arms formed two large cylinders on his arms near his wrists, that are full of green energy with dark green bubble-like spheres, which constantly move. Over his chest was the Omnitrix symbol that had identical dark green bubble-like spheres. A belt formed around his waist within the middle of it, and a dial and a helmet formed on his head with a pointed crown, and his helmet had no mouth. "Atomics," he yelled out with the voice of an old-school hero. "So what can this guy do?" All Might asked the teen. "Pripyatosian A's like their neighbors that live above the ground, the Pripyatosian B," he said told the heroics teacher. "What can his race do?" Toshinori asked as he looked at the computers so that he could aid in the training. "Both of the Pripyatosian species have the power of using nuclear energy, but the A's can generate it themselves while the B's cannot," Izuku told the teacher. "Right," he said as he typed on the keyboard. 30 minuets later. "It seems that you're keeping your form better than before," Izuku said to All Might. "You're right, young Midoriya," All Might said as he looked himself over, "and I can still feel the embers of One for All," Toshinori said as he moved his arms. "But can you keep up?" Izuku asked him as he activated the Omnitrix. "You're not going XLR8, thou," All Might said, confused. "Citricayas are not as fast as Kinesalarans, but they are fast," Izuku said as he pressed the core in, and the flash started the transformation. As the Omnitrix started to dig itself into his arm, his body became cat-like as his clothes changed to a full-body black suit-like color scheme, and his hands, legs, chest, and part of his head were colored blue. Over his face, he had black mask-like fins around his green eyes, a triangle-shaped nose, a thunderbolt-like design down his chest, and a triangle one down his back. On his arms and legs grew out blue spikes, and on his chest formed the Omnitrix dial as he yelled in a high-pitched voice, "Fast track." "So, like I said, can you keep up?" Izuku said in a high-pitched voice before running off somewhere. "Oh, man," Toshinori said as he ran after his student. "Don't worry, Toshi," a woman's voice told him. Toshinori then looked behind him, not seeing anyone. "Master," Toshinori said as he looked around before returning to the chase with his student. 30 minuets later. "Now that you have stopped running, can you tell me why?" Toshinori asked the teen, sounding out of breath. "You've been doing hardly any training yourself while you have your quirk," Izuku said to him. "What about it?" Toshinori asked him. "Your body is known using the embers of one for all to make your quirk better for you," he told the number 1 hero. Toshinori said nothing while Izuku turned to the following alien and pressed the core in. As the Omnitrix tunneled its way into Izuku's arm as he shrunk down as his body turned pure white as an MP3 player formed on his back with a port decorated with a 10 symbol and cassette tapes on its lower legs. Small green circle-shaped indents developed all over his body. Over his ears, headphones started to develop over them and then attached themselves to the MP3 on his back. "Echo echo," he shouted as his voice sounded like it was coming out of a megaphone. "So what can this guy do?" Toshinori asked as he kept a count on how long he had, and he was surprised. Sonoros can clone themselves and use sonic screams, Izuku told him as he looked up at the hero. He told the teen to walk into the center of the room as he pressed a few keys, and a maze formed around the teen. "Try and find your way out," he told the teen. "Got it," Izuku told the man as he separated himself into 5, and they all ran off. 30 minuets later. "The following form of mine is a bit from what I was told as a warrior," Izuku said as All Might looked to be in thought. "So it could be the same as Buzzsaw and Ghost Freak that you get a new personality?" he asked the teen. "Possibly," Izuku said as he pressed the core in. The Omnitrix bore itself into Izuku's arm as his clothes became a loose jungle green GI, with the kanji of lion on the front left of his shirt, with the same kanji on the back that was secured together with a black obi tied in a knot at the left of his waist. He has black wristbands covering nearly his entire forearms and blue boots cling together on the front of his shins. He then grew to the same size as Aizawa as the muscles in his arms bulged out, and his hair turned black. The hair became untamed, with 3 bangs hanging to the right of his forehead and 2 hanging to the left. His hair stands up in the front with 5 spikes and 4 in the back. A brown furred tail burst out from his tailbone and wrapped around his waist. On his chest, the dial of the Omnitrix formed as he yelled out with his arms spread out, "Mango." Izuku looked at All Might, and the one thing the hero thought was, so he has got pride within him. "Yes, sensei," Izuku asked as he crossed his arms. "What can Mango do?" he asked the teen. "In this form, I can gather a type of energy called ki and use it in a multitude of ways," he told the man. "Well then, let's start your training in this ki then," he told his apprentice. "You're right," he said as he walked over to a computer and started typing something. 30 minuets later. "Do you know anything about the next alien?" All Might asked the teen as the training room now had some holes in the walls. "I think they are called Ablos, and they can detect danger and have great luck," Izuku said as All Might looked confused. "They control luck?" he asked the teen. "I think so," Izuku said as he started to transform. The Omnitrix sank into Izuku's arm as he moved. His body moved to fall to all fours as his skin turned dark blue, and white fur grew out of him. The fur that formed around his neck was rough around its neck and chest and a tuft on its head adorned with a single oval. A crescent-shaped horn formed out of the side of his head, and his head having vaguely resembles a Wu-Wei symbol. His body turned to look more feline as a scythe-like tail burst out. Both his hands and feet became broad feet are equipped with 3 claws each, and dewclaw-like spikes protrude from the heels of his hind legs and the elbows of his front legs. And to finish off the transformation, a collar with the Omnitrix dial rested around his neck. "Zangetsu," he called out with a mighty deep shout. "Follow me, young Midoriya," Toshinori said as he walked over to an assault course. "Try and get thou it," he told the teen. "Understood," Izuku said as he started making his way down the assault course. 30 minuets later. So this next race is like that of Dunggeek, he asked his student, thing of the blue monkey alien. That's right, Izuku said as he turned the dial on the core to the next hologram and pressed it in. As the Omnitrix burrowed through Izuku's arm, his body turned into an ape-like body. On his hands, his index fingers merged with the middle one while the ring fingers merged with the pinkies. He grew out blue fur over his back and arms while his chest grew some navy skin. 2 more eyes grew on his head as, like most of his new aliens, a tail grew with blue fur and 2 white stripes near the tip of the tail. As the Omnitrix dial formed on his chest, he gave a chattering of, "Spider monkey," followed up by some monkey noises. Izuku then, looking at All Might, shot some webs at him from his tail. "Very funny, young Midoriya," All Might said. He picked up basketballs and started throwing them at Izuku. 30 minuets later. "So I have to channel my anger," Izuku said as black energy tendrils with a blue outline flowed out of his fists. "You're right," All Might said as he looked at the quirk of the 5th user of One for All. "But now onto your next transformation," he told his student. "Right," Izuku responded as he activated the Omnitrix and then pressed the core in. The Omnitrix pushed its way through Izuku's arm as his body turned purple as it shrank down and became roundish with stubby a tail and stubby arms and legs with 3 digits on each of the limbs. His face was forced into a wide mouth curled into a sinister grin, and his ears had become pointed. Over his back, spikes formed, and they also formed on the top of his head, making it look like some hair. The Omnitrix dial popped out of his forehead as he called out in a creepy voice, "Shadow." Izuku looked at All Might before he started to sink to the floor. "Not this again," he said as he heard laughter from all around him. He walked around to try and find his apprentice, unaware he was within his shadow. 30 minuets later. "Now on to the next one," All Might said as he heard the faint sound of the Omnitrix activating thou a think cloud of smoke. "Got you," he heard Izuku's voice say as a flash of light was shown thou the smoke. As the Omnitrix sank into Izuku's arm as his skin turned red, his body shape changed from that of a human to a manta ray, and his hands turned into 3-finged claws and the same as his feet. The patagia that grew out from his wrists to his tailbone was yellow as along his rib cage, 6 gills opened up. As his face flattened down, yellow horns extended from his nose and 2 black stripes came down from his shoulders to where the Omnitrix formed on his chest as he yelled out with a nasally voice, "Jetre," and the transformation was finished. Izuku then started to fly around and shoot lasers from his eyes and tail. "Now wait for the targets this time, please," All Might said as he pressed some buttons. 30 minuets later. "Okay, now for the transformation that was unlocked with One for All," Toshinori said, getting a nod from the team. Izuku activates the Omnitrix as the core pops up and the holograms appear. Izuku then started to turn the dial to his new transformation, and as the hologram stood there waiting for him to press it down, All Might looked at him. "What you are waiting for?" All Might asked him. Izuku turned to look at All Might. "I've heard stories about Celestial Sapien," he said to the heroics teacher. "What are they about?" he asked his student. "That Celestial Sapiens have 3 voices in their heads, and I just know that I'm going to be one of those voices," Izuku told the hero, "and that they are almighty beings that are omnipotent," he said to the man. "So they are like gods," Toshinori said as Izuku nodded with his bulky form deflating. "So he has a god transformation," Toshinori thought as he looked at the hologram, "but he needs training with it," his thought continued as his eyes moved to the eyes of the teen. "I think that you should transform into it so that you can meet the other voices," All Might told Izuku. "Got it," Izuku said as he pressed the core in and was covered in emerald light. As the Omnitrix burrowed itself into Izuku's arm, his entire body was solid black, but his hands changed to solid white. His mouth sealed itself as his body gained small white stars all over his body, making his body have the appearance of a starry night sky. His eyes became solid green as 3 horns formed on his head, and he yelled out with 3 voices, "Alien X." Later that day, Class 1A dorm 5th floor. Izuku walked out of the elevator and walked over to his door to see that Kyoka was standing in front of it. "Hey there, Green," she said to Izuku as she waved him over. "Yay," he asked as he walked over to her. "Can we talk in your room?" she asked him. Izuku looked at her with a questioning look, and he was sending his hyper instinct at her to see what she was doing and found out that she was not the spy and wanted to tell him something. Izuku nodded his head as he opened the door to his room as he let her in. So what can I do for you? He asked her. Well, I was coming here for two things. She started as looked at the teen. The first was, can you teach me how to use your fighting style? She asked him as he brought over a glass of water to her. And what is the other thing? Izuku asked her. I'll tell you after the training, she told him, hoping he would go for it. Izuku looked at her for a bit, weighing the options on what to do. So you want to learn Shishiken? Izuku asked her. Is it possible? She asked him with a nod. Well, yes, but you first have to know what your inner animal is, Izuku told her as she cocked her head. What do you mean? She asked him. To learn another form of Gekijuken, you must learn to use your own first, he told her. Oh, really? She asked him. Yay, Izuku said as he walked over to a cupboard and pulled out two rolled-up mats. I'll show you, he said as he rolled out both the mats on the floor. She moved to sit on the mat that was in front of him. Now close your eyes, he told her. She did so as she followed what he said to her. Now find your censure, he told her as she focused on digging in on herself. Now tell your inner animal to show you its home, he informed her. The picture that she was getting of a frozen wasteland, she looked around to see that her surroundings were that of a frozen ocean. She then looked down to see a five-clawed white-furred paw. As Kyoka was looking for her inner animal, Izuku could see that she started to glow a battleship gray orb that began to take the form of an animal. Izuku saw the shape of an animal that was another carnivore in front of him. So she is a bear, Izuku said as he watched Kyoka open her eyes to look at him. I'm a polar bear, she told him as Izuku nodded his head before getting up. What do I do now? She asked him. Now, you train with your inner beast to find out what you can do, Izuku told her. Now, what is the other thing? Izuku asked her as they returned to sitting on the furniture. I know about your quirk, she told him. Izuku showed nothing on the outside. But on the inside, he was wide-eyed. How did she find out I normally send out hyper-intuition to see if there was anyone, he thought but said, what quirk? One for all, she informed him as she looked at him with the eyes of her inner animal. Shit, he cursed as he looked at her. What do you want? He asked her. To be honest, she asked him as he gave her a nod. I wanted to ask you when I found this out when I heard you talking to Bakugo, she continued. And what do you want to know? He asked her. Nothing, she said as she looked at him. Nothing, he asked her, confused. Well, not nothing, she said as he got ready for it. I want to help you with catching the spy, she told him. I did not expect that, he thought. And what do we get in exchange? And don't say that you won't tell anyone about this quirk because as you did the person behind the Nomu wants this quirk, he told her. So that means that you have to let me in, or he will know, she told him. You're lying, Izuku told her as she looked shocked. No, I'm no. Yes, you are, as I don't need a lie detector quirk to know. Izuku interrupted Kyoka as his green eyes turned from green to orange. Now what do you want? He asked her as he matched her animal eyes with his. I want in, she told him with her head dropping. In, he asked her, confused. I want to be with you like Bakugo and Uraraka, she told him. Izuku looked at her in shock as he heard the familiar roar of his lion. Oh no, you are not doing that, he told the lion. He heard another roar that seemed to say, I am, so watch me. Izuku started letting out some golden aura, which in turn forced her to do the same with her own aura. What is happening? She asked him as she started to go red in the face. My lion, Izuku started saying before his eyes began to cloud over. He wants to breed and, he said as his voice became labored, and when you said that you want in, he added. Oh, she said as her bear spirit was being called out from within her. Do you want that lion? She asked her animal spirit, who in turn responded with a growl. She got up from where she was sitting and showed no care for foreplay as she just unzipped his pants, pulled out his dick, and rammed it right into her and had him take her BPT. He looked at her with lust-clouded eyes as she started to bounce on his lap and beeped as Izuku began tearing off her clothes as he reached for her flat chest. He's going to stop because I don't have tits like Uraraka and Bakugo, she thought before she felt as he bit on her nipple. Kyoka then squealed with delight. More, bite me more, she told him. Izuku did not respond with words, but he did move his mouth to her neck, where he latched on and bit down. So she's into that, is she? He thought when he heard another beep, and she was picked up the pace. Izuku lifted her and started to pound away at her as her mind was slowly going. He's beeping my brains out, she thought as he carried her to his bedroom. Yes, 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 she chanted over and over as she could feel that she was close to release. Come on, baby, pound me into your mattress, make an imprint of my ass, she said out of character for her. What has gotten into that girl? Izuku thought as he felt her tighten up around him. Mark me, she shouted as she came over him and squirted over his chest. But Izuku kept going as he pounded away at her relentlessly. And thanks to one of the quirks within One for All, he made Kyoka feel like she was on cloud 9, so he decided to add the power of another quirk. His thrusting seemed to pick up pace as the teen under him became an even more beeping mess that she was. YYSL lick KTH hat, she said as her body was rocked by pleasure once more. And yet she had not felt him come. The bounding became slower as he reached his limit, so this is all the energy I can gather at the moment, Izuku thought as he felt that he was close to release. That's right, he heard in his head as he sent his load into Kyoka. As he collapsed onto her, he heard another voice, but this time it was a woman. He did pound her good, she said before the voices stopped. Kyoka turned to face him and asked, I'm one of your girls now. Izuku rolled off her as she rolled to face him. If you won't be with a crazy alien boy, he said to her. She stripped the rest of her clothes off as she snuggled up to him. I don't mind, she said as Izuku beeped her forehead and held her close. As both of them fell into the sleep realm, they heard a clicking sound. 1 week later, UA Academy, Class 1A. After both classes of the UA Hero course had returned to the school as they all filed into the classroom. What are we all doing here? Katsuki asked as she looked around the classroom to see both classes here. Maybe it's to change some people from one class to another, like moving all the boys but me and changing them for all the girls, Minoru said as he tried to give the girls a beepy smile. And I mean, he tried as soon as he looked at Katsuki, so Izuku sent his fist out and punched the boy behind him. 1. No girl would ever want a useless perv like you, Izuku said as he turned to look at the great boy. 2. As you even think about thinking that way about my sister, girlfriends or my cousin. I will neuter you with a rusty spoon, he told the boy with slit golden eyes. Minoru started shaking and turned place white as he looked at the teen in front of him. WW, what do you mean girlfriends? He asked as he looked ready to faint in his seat. I'm Polly, and my 3 girlfriends are okay with that, he told the teen as the others in the classroom looked shocked by this and also relieved. So that means that I still have a chance with him, Momo thought as she looked at him before asking, and who are they? She asked him. Well, there's me, Katsuki said as he raised her hand before Ochako and Kyoka did the same. Me too, Ochako said as the others looked at the girl. And me, Kyoka said as she looked at the girl with the creation quirk, and we are quite happy, she said. How is that? The girl with the vine hair asked them. Deku makes our equipment and helps us use our quirks at their fullest, Ochako said as she looked at the others. Ochako looked over the people in the room and tried to find something before placing her hand on the desk before it started to float. And he is giving us lessons in Gekijuken to bring out our inner animal spirits, Katsuki said as she glowed and gave off a ghost white aura that seemed to take the form of a snow leopard, took shape and sat in front of her. Ochako did the same, put was glowing magenta, and a tiger sat in front of her. Kyoka started to give off a battleship gray aura as it took the form of a polar bear that sat next to her. So all 3 of you now know Gekijuken, Enba said as she looked at them. I merged Yukihyo Ken with my quirk, and it has some results, Katsuki said as she shrugged. I will only use my Tora Ken when I'm in close combat, Ochako said as the animals faded back into their users. I'm still trying to use my Shirokuma Ken and work with it, Kyoka said as Izuku nodded his head. And I've unlocked some new transformations, Izuku told them as his classmates looked shocked. Before anyone else could speak up, the door to the classroom opened as both homeroom teachers walked in. Aizawa-sensei, are you okay? Suyu asked the hobo-looking man. And the reason for that is that he had bandages wrapped around his head that made him look like a mummy. Yay, I'm fine thanks to Midoriya, Shota said as he looked at the students, but the old woman thought that I might need to have theses on, he told them. But that is not why we are here, Sekijiro said as he drew the eyes to him. There is something else that we must inform you, he told them. And what is that? Tenya asked the man. Something that will test your mettle and your power, Shota said as everyone felt his eyes on him. Is it more villains? Minoru asked as he was still recovering from the scarring from Izuku. It's the sports festival, both teachers said as one. Is that a good idea? Izuku and Enba asked the teachers simultaneously. Everyone looked at the siblings in shock before Hitoshi asked the two of them, what do you mean? Think about it. This is televised, and the villains will know about our powers, Izuku said as his sister nodded. I know what you mean, but our hands were tied, Shota said as the other teacher nodded his head. Izuku Tennyson Midoriya has both green eyes and hair while standing a 5 feet 5 and a quarter, with fair skin and 4 symmetrical freckles in diamond formations, one on each cheek. Izuku's hero costume is a jungle green full-body jumpsuit with a red belt with 10 pouches, elbow pads, a pair of green jungle gloves that held a red gem that had the Omnitrix symbol on the back of the hand, and black flame-type designs also covers the base of the gloves. All 8 of his rings donned his fingers. His right arm has a metal cannon strapped to it, with a skull's face over the glove and a barrel aimed out of the skull's mouth. Another head mounted on the rear end of the cannon allows various ammunition to be loaded. A bangle on his left shoulder with a circular-shaped plate with 10 pieces of metal sticking out to make it look like a sun, knee pads, and black combat boots. He also had on a lime green jacket. On his head was a green jungle helmet that resembled a lion with a gold-tinted visor that highlighted the jaws of the lion over the eyes. Around his waist is another belt that held silver cine thin rectangular tubes, 8 in total. Quirks. One for all. One for all is a quirk that 8 other people have passed down, and it doubles in power each time until it has reached the point where it has reached singularity. When Izuku had been one for all, the Omnitrix gave him new forms. One for all also allows Izuku to stockpile an enormous amount of raw power, allowing him to enhance their physical abilities to a superhuman level significantly. This results in unbelievable strength, speed, agility, and durability levels. Super move. No super moves yet. Quirks within One for All. Energy transfer. This quirk allows the user to transfer energy from the quirk to another person. Super move. No super moves yet. Family stockpile. This quirk allows the user to stockpile energy for strength, speed and stamina. This quirk also stockpiles quirks of the past users of One for All. Super move. No super moves yet. Strength of Hercules. This quirk allows the user to gather energy to boost their strength. Super move. No super moves yet. Speed boost. This quirk allows the user to gather energy to give a boost to their speed. Super move. No super moves yet. Charge. This quirk allows the user to gather energy and send it to any body part. Super move. No super moves yet. All night long. This quirk allows the user to gather energy to give a boost to their speed. Super move. No super moves yet. Lover's bond. This quirk is currently unknown on what it can. Super move. No super moves yet. Multitasking. This quirk allows the user to concentrate on more than one thing at a time, but the time limit for what he needs to focus on is currently unknown. Super move. No super moves yet. Fa Jin. Fa Jin allows the user to build up kinetic energy by repeating regular motions and storing it for later use. Then, when the user chooses to release the energy, they gain an explosive burst of speed and power. The user can choose only to use some of the stored energy at a time, allowing them to achieve multiple bursts of speed and power. The addition of the already stockpiled energy that makes up One for All dramatically increases the power of Fa Jin to the point that just 45% of One for All's power, in conjunction with energy stored up by Fa Jin and slinging with Black Whip, is enough to reach comparable 100% levels, and without the backlash to the body. Super move. No super moves yet. Danger sense. This quirk allows the user to detect potential threats in the surrounding area, thus allowing the user to react to them quickly and appropriately, similar to a sixth sense. Izuku describes the detection of a threat as a sharp stabbing sensation in his head. The quirk can sense one's intent and negative emotions. Against human enemies, their intentions of threat and malice trigger danger sense. According to Izuku, this quirk takes a significant toll on the user's body depending on the threat it senses, although this may be a result of the quirk being strengthened by One for All. This drawback doesn't seem to adversely affect Izuku anymore, implying that it can be mild through training. Sufficiently fast attacks can also prevent the user from being able to dodge them properly. Super move, Hyper Instinct. By being born with sky flames, danger sense has been boosted, and he can now judge someone with it. Black Whip. Black Whip grants the user the ability to produce energy tendrils from any part of their body and command them at will. These tendrils are black in coloration with a glowing light teal outline. This quirk appears to be powered by emotions, primarily anger, meaning the more significant the anger, the stronger the quirk becomes. Daigoro describes Black Whip as a top-grade quirk. It appears to help capture enemies and increase one's mobility by grabbing onto objects. Izuku has also been shown to use Black Whip inside his own body. As Daigoro described it, if not entirely in control of their emotions, the user risks losing control of Black Whip. Since its power is linked to the user's emotions, Black Whip can be difficult for the user to control, as Daigoro explains that it isn't a quirk that can be used carelessly. Furthermore, it has become even harder to control and master due to being empowered by One for All. Super move. No super moves yet. Smokescreen. Smokescreen allows the user to generate a thick cloud of smoke from their body. The smoke can be spread to cover a vast area. This serves to obscure opponents' vision and catch them by surprise. If too much smoke is released, the user might have difficulty navigating through the thick haze, and it can backfire if the opponent manages to get the drop on the user. This quirk also has no offensive potential, and according to N, it can't be raised to the ultimate move level. Smokescreen cannot spread very far in the rain. Super move. No super moves yet. Float. Float allows the user to levitate and suspend themselves in midair. With the added enhancement of the stockpiled energy from One for All, float becomes drastically more powerful, allowing the user to fly at high speeds. Super move. No super moves yet. Dying Will Flames. The Dying Will Flame is described as a high-density form of energy refined from one's life force. Due to how it resonates with one's emotions, it has been regarded as a battle aura. However, unlike the aura, a supernatural phenomenon that a few individuals can only see, the Dying Will Flame is more like a real flame, possessing even its destructive properties. Dying Will Flames are graded according to their purity, which directly relates to the strength of an individual's resolve. This makes the purity of a flame a reflection of the power and size of a person's determination. Among other things, this purity rate indicates how much of the unique characteristics of the flames are being drawn out. Each flame's attribute has its unique characteristic. Flames must be used using a ring that has a level equivalent to the purity of the flame. If the wearer wears a ring with a lower level of flame purity, the ring will break as it cannot withstand the force of the flame. Types of Dying Will Flames. Sky Flame. Sky flames are colored mostly orange in the core with yellow-orange to bright yellow outlines. It also flickers like fire. Two different types of sky flames are known to exist. First is the soft sky flame, the standard kind that sky flame users can produce. Its energy concentration is dispersed, so it is suitable for hovering or maintaining a stance. The soft sky flames have an orange core with pale orange to the bright yellow-orange body. The second type is the hard sky flames. They are said to have the highest purity among the other types. They are released by an increase in explosive energy and are used for a straight burst of speed or simply raw power. Its core has a reddish shade of orange, and the parts closer to its edges are colored with varying shades of orange with sparkling crystal-like particles. Described as having many mysteries, its characteristic, harmony, represents a state without contradiction nor flaws in which the balance of the whole is maintained. The harmony characteristic allows it to combine with other types of Dying Will Flames to create a new one. The Oath Flame is a combination of sky and earth flame. The Flame of Wrath is a fusion of sky and storm flames. 0-point breakthrough. Revised utilizes the harmony characteristic, as it harmonizes with the enemy's flame and absorbs it. The Sky Flame was also shown to have the ability to petrify. Super move. Stinco di Leone, Lion Knuckle, a punch of sky flames. Stinco di Leone. Pugno del Re Bestia, Lion Knuckle. Fist of the Beast King, Gekiju Shishi Ken Geki Shin Juaken but with sky flames instead of Geki. Juju Shishi Ken Leone Shiso, Lion Dash Izuku gets down on all fours as his body gets covered by sky flames and his lion spirit, and so he runs thou the target, and when he is on the other side, the target is turned to stone. Storm Flame. The core of a storm flame is an ordinary red shade. However, its inner layer is pale red, almost pink-like. The outer edges of the flame are deep crimson. The core and inner layer remain intact while the outer edges of the storm flame burn erratically and form soft tendrils before leaving the main body. Storm flames are highly offensive, primarily used for attacking. Its disintegration characteristic causes anything it touches to decay and break apart, including other dying will flames. It can also minimize the effect of other flame-enhanced attacks or break through other flames. Super move. Storm's Roar. Izuku sends a shock wave of storm flames from his mouth. Rain Flame. Rain flames are primarily blue with shimmering particles that seem to flow through them, giving them an appearance similar to rippling water. The core is cerulean blue, and the outer sections are a lighter tone of blue. Its tranquility characteristic allows it to weaken anything it touches. It can be used to slow down the opponent's movements or attacks. It can also negate and cancel out other flames or energy up to a point. One proficient in the Rain Flame can use its tranquility characteristic to such a degree that anything entering a certain barrier will be completely immobilized, effectively breaking machines and killing a human by stopping all biological functions. Rain flames are also able to be frozen, just like sky flames. Super moves. Rain Shield. Izuku covers himself if rain flames that slow the impact of an attack that would hurt him. Lotus Dance Spider Wave Crash. Izuku sends out waves of rain flames at his target. Lotus Dance Rain Web. After stabbing all 8 rain tubs into the ground, it forms a web of rain flames that can slow anyone down. Sun Flame. Sun flames possess a whitish core with layers of yellow enveloping it. Its most distinguishing characteristic is the tiny dot-shaped sparkles it beams, similar to small stars. They constantly appear in motion, spiking in some places and flowing in others. The activation characteristic of sun flames has the power to induce and improve the efficiency of any activity. It can increase the blood flow rate and cell regeneration, making it optimal for support roles such as healing and strengthening individuals. Sun flames can also stimulate muscles and joints, drastically increasing the user's body functions. The activation characteristic also makes it challenging to use sun flames in direct combat, as the user must spend his energy and flames for healing and attacking. Also, overusing the activation characteristic can lead to cellular death. Super moves. No super moves yet. Lightning Flame. Unlike other dying will flames, lightning flames are in many ways more similar to electricity than actual flames. They have a light green core with extremely sharp dark neon green electricity-like spikes. It forms round shapes around its source with the sharper parts violently thrashing about, similar to how electricity is often depicted in animated works. Also, when a lightning flame is lit, a buzzing sound similar to that of electricity is heard instead of the typical flame sound associated with fire. The lightning flame is known as the toughest flame due to its characteristic hardening. Lightning flames can be employed to solidify and increase the firmness of objects. By themselves, the flames can be used defensively by projecting a solid barrier and offensively by cutting like a sharp blade. It can also be used to electrocute like actual electricity. Super moves. No super moves yet. Mist Flame. Like sky flames, there are 2 types of mist flames. Soft mist flames do not have a core and are indigo with lighter tones going to almost white the closer it is to the source. Hard mist flames also do not have a core and are dark indigo with gray particles. The mist flame's characteristic construction makes it optimal to be used in conjunction with illusions. It can be used to create realistic illusions, easily fooling the senses. The created real illusions can be used for either escaping or rendering the opponent vulnerable to an attack. Stronger illusions can also affect bodily functions. Super moves. Beat King Paradise, Soft Flame, Izuku calls out lions. Cloud Flame. Cloud Flame's primary color is purple. The core is purple, and the rest of the Cloud Flame has an ashen tone of violet, making it one of the most light-colored types of flame. The Cloud Flame's shape is more oblique and somewhat unstable looking, randomly flickering and spewing particles similar to how smoke disperses. Its characteristic, propagation, carries the ability to increase and multiply. As such, it is suited for anything that involves an increase in size and multiplication of numbers. It is highly advantageous when performing techniques involving a large area, such as creating a cyclone or an impervious force field. Super moves. King's Lariat. Izuku can make his arms' muscles grow before using a lariat on the enemy. Gorira form, Gorilla, Izuku 30% of Grira Kengeki and 70% of Cloud Flames to make his muscles bulge. Snow Flame. The Snow Flame seems to vaguely resemble mist flames, though they are much lighter in color. The margins of the flame gradually turn into a light blue color, and there are also some sparkling elements inside the flame. The Snow Flames are the ones seen as the most concerning flame as its characteristic of elemental. The user can wile the elements with this flame and use it however they see fit. Super moves. Lighting King, Thunder, Izuku slashes at the air with a claw-like strike sending out waves of lightning. Surface Slicer, Water, Izuku kicks and sends out a sharp arc of water. Mud Wall, Earth, Izuku forms a wall of earth in front or behind him. Dark Swamp, Earth, Izuku can turn the floor or the ceiling into mud to trap the enemy. Gekiju Ken. Gekiju Ken is the various martial arts techniques that utilize fierce ki, known as Geki Waza. Geki Shin, a standard Gekiwaza. Geki Da, a common Gekiwaza, uses physical moves. Geki Dan, a common Gekiwaza, uses special moves. Super moves. Gekiju Seishin Wakajiri. Izuku gathers energy around him to give him a fresh start. Gekiju Juken Geki Waza Tenshi Gome. Izuku sends out a Geki Waza of all of his animal spirits at the target. Forms of Jiju Ken. Shishi Ken. Shishi Ken is a fighting style that uses the spirit of the lion. Super moves. Geki Ju Shishi Ken Geki Waza Oo Dan, King Bullet. Izuku sends out a golden lion at the target. Gekiju Shishi Ken Geki Shin Juiken, Beast King Fist. Izuku shoots a golden lion head at the target. Gekiju Shishi Ken Geki Da Gun Apikato, Roaring Uppercut. Izuku's fist gains a golden lion paw around it. Gekiju Shishi Ken Geki Da Gun Saramu, Roaring Slam. Izuku's palm has the visage of a lion's paw before sending out a wave of ki. Juju Shishi Ken Leoni Shiso, Lion Dash. Izuku gets down on all fours as his body gets covered by sky flames and his lion spirit, and so he runs through the target, and when he is on the other side, the target is turned to stone. Gorira Ken. Gorira Ken is a fighting style that uses the spirit of the gorilla. Super moves. Gorira form, Gorilla. Izuku 30% of Grira Kengeki and 70% of Cloud Flames to make his muscles bulge. Omnitrix. In the first form that Ben encountered, the Omnitrix looked like an oversized wristwatch, primarily black and gray, with a gray or black dial in the middle like a watch face, which has a green hourglass shape on it. It has a circular tube. When Izuku selects his aliens, it shows the alien silhouette. When Izuku gained one for all, the Omnitrix changed. The Omnitrix now resembles a digital wristwatch. Its faceplate is now square rather than round and has a white, green, and black color scheme. The faceplate is black, with two green stripes forming an outline for the hourglass of the Galvantech logo. When the faceplate is slid back, the Omnitrix's core is revealed. When Izuku selects his aliens, it shows the alien's hologram standing on the core rather than the alien's silhouette. Transformation. Heat Blast. Heat Blast is a plasma-based life form whose body is composed of a super-hot inner plasma body covered by dark reddish-brown volcanic rocks. As a fire-based entity, his body radiates high amounts of heat. His feet have a slight oval-like design with only 2 and 1 back toe. His tongue is also made of fire, while his collarbone resembles a volcano which generates a fiery hair that covers his head, leaving his mask-like face visible with no nose or ears. Super moves. No super moves. Wild Mutt. Wild Mutt appears to be a large orange dog-like creature with no eyes, ears, nose, or tail. He stands on all fours, and his movements are somewhat ape-like. His teeth are very defined, and his bottom jaw sticks out of his mouth. The various spines found all across his body function similarly to whiskers with tactile sensing and are not fur. Since Wild Mutt has no eyes, he uses his sense of smell and hearing to navigate, aided by 3 gill-like nostrils on each side of his neck. It has the Omnitrix dial on a collar. Super moves. No super moves. Diamond Head. A silicon-based life form made of super hard, green, blue diamond-like material. Diamond Head's body is composed of durable pale green crystals. He sports 4 crystal shards on his back and has a short head. Diamond Head's lower body and torso consist of indigo crystal with black lines and dots over it. There were 6 crystal shards on his back, and he also sported 2 more on the front of his chest. Super moves. No super moves. XLR8. XLR8 resembles a semi-armored velociraptor. He has black orbs on his feet, a black tail with 5 blue stripes, and bulky claws on his 3 fingers that can only open and close. He wears a black cone-like helmet with a protective visor that slides over his face that is part of his kinesilaran biology and not mechanical. When the visor is lifted, one can see his blue face, green eyes, black lips, and stripes running under and in between his eyes. The rest of his head's features are unknown. XLR8 has 5 blue stripes on his tail and wears a black bodysuit and turtleneck-like shirt with a green stripe on the center. Super moves. No super moves. Gray Matter. Gray Matter is a gray-skinned, frog-like, bipedal alien only 4 inches tall with large green eyes with rectangular pupils and horizontal eyelids. Super moves. No super moves. 4 arms. 4 arms is a humanoid alien approximately 12 feet tall, with well-developed muscles, 2 pairs of 4-fingered arms, and red skin. A black stripe goes from his chin to his lower lip, and he has 4 eyes, the main pair and a smaller pair below them, while he lacks ears or nose. He has whisker-like spikes on each forearm. 4 arms wears gold wrist and ankle bands, a pair of black pants with a gold waistband, fingerless gloves, and 2 golden sashes across his chest. His eyes are green. He has a black ponytail and tattoo-like stripes on his body. Super moves. No super moves. Stinkfly. Stinkfly has a bug insect body and 4 insect-like flat legs with 2 arms, whose hands are human-style ones with 3 clawed fingers. He has 4 small eyes on long stalks connected to his large head, which can all be moved around independently from each other. His wings are light green and very fragile with lines on them, and his limbs are a brown-greenish color. His tail is an ultra-sensitive receptor, making it like an antenna. Super moves. No super moves. Ripjaws. Ripjaws share several traits with Earth's aquatic life, such as an alligator, an eel, a leech, an anglerfish, and a shark. He can change between a fishtail with triangular lines or legs and has a luminous light on his head. Super moves. No super moves. Upgrade. Upgrade has a black exterior with green stripes that resemble circuitry all over him. The green circle on his head is his eye, which glows whenever he talks. His body is made up of billions of small cell-like creatures called nanites. Super moves. No super moves. Ghost Freak. Ghost Freak is a phantom, ghost-like alien with a gaseous appearance, claw-like hands, and gray skin with black lines running all over him. His skin is removable with black and white striped tentacles underneath it, however, his proper form is unknown. Ghost Freak has another voice within his head that calls itself the High Ecto Lord. Super moves. No super moves. Feedback. Feedback has a black body with 1 green eye in the middle of his head, 2 antennae, a tail with round plugs on its tips, 4 fingered hands, and feet with only 2 front toes. Over his chest is a green square that holds the Omnitrix dial. Super moves. No super moves. Dotara. This human is like a human male with shaggy white hair and attractive facial features and 6 Magatama designs tattooed on his collarbones to resemble a necklace, had a pair of horn-like protrusions extending from either side of his forehead. He was dressed in an elegant, slim-cut, white long-sleeved tailcoat and an oversized collar that folded back upon itself over his bare muscular torso, over a pair of baggy black pants that often covered his bare feet. The dial of the Omnitrix is on the chest. Super moves. No super moves. Warg, an orange reptilian alien with a humanoid body structure. Its face is covered in a silver metal helmet, with one spike on its nose, two spikes behind its eyes, and spiky hair on the back of its head. The shin guards, cuirass, and spiked shoulder pads it wears are held in place by thick, black cable-like ropes. It has two large, three-clawed green gauntlets in its hands. A green shield it carries on its back is emblazoned with the Omnitrix symbol. The dial of the Omnitrix is on the chest. Super moves. No super moves. Humungosaur. Humungosaur is a somewhat humanoid dinosaur standing about 12 feet tall with a hard skin that is colored brown on its outer side and beige on its inner side. Humungosaur wears a green and a black sash across his chest, going from his right shoulder to the left side of his lower back, containing the Omnitrix dial. Super moves. No super moves. Buzzsaw. Buzzsaw's appearance is similar to an Earth dry cell battery, albeit rounded out. He is black with green eyes, a large green lightning bolt-like stripe from his neck to his waist on his front and back sides, and positive plus and negative symbols on his back. Super moves. No super moves. Fast Track. Fast Track is a feline-like alien with a black suit-like color scheme, and his hands, legs, chest, and part of his head are colored blue. He has black mask-like fins around his green eyes, a triangle-shaped nose, a thunderbolt-like design down his chest, and a triangle one down his back. He also has spike-like blades on his arms and legs. Super moves. No super moves. Echo Echo. Echo Echo is a small, white humanoid made of silicon. One of his most noticeable features is a square appendage resembling an MP3 player behind his back with a port on it, decorated with a 10 symbol and what looks like cassette tapes on his lower legs. The green circle-shaped indents on the back of Echo Echo's hands are sound holes, and the inside of his mouth is also green with lines that give it the appearance of an amplifier. He also wears headphones so his own sonic screams would not hurt him. The headphones are attached to a backpack. Super moves. No super moves. Mango. A human-like alien that is a tall man of muscular build. His black hair is unkempt, with 3 bangs hanging to the right of his forehead and 2 hanging to the left. His hair stands in the front with 5 spikes and 4 in the back. Long and prehensile tail with brown fur. He was in loose GI, with kanji on the front left of his shirt, secured together with an obi tied in a knot at the left of his waist. He also wore wristbands covering nearly his entire forearms and blue boots clipping together on the front of his shins. Super moves. No super moves. Zangetsu. A quadrupedal, mammalian alien covered in white fur. It has a ruff around its neck and chest and a tuft on its head adorned with a single oval. Between the dark blue skin, the curvature of the fur on its head, and the positioning of its horn, its face vaguely resembles a Wu-Wei symbol. It has a feline face with an almond-shaped, side-like tail and a crescent-shaped horn on the side of its head. Its broad feet are equipped with 3 claws each, and dewclaw-like spikes protrude from the heels of its hind legs and the elbows of its front legs. It has the Omnitrix dial on a collar. Super moves. No super moves. Spider Monkey. Spider Monkey is a small monkey-like alien with 4 arms, 2 legs, 3 fingers on each hand and 3 toes on each foot, blue fur over a dark blue center, and a tail with 2 stripes near the tip. The Omnitrix dial on his chest is now connected to 2 green sashes worn across his chest. Super moves. No super moves. Shadow. A bipedal alien with a roundish body. It has a wide mouth curled into a sinister grin and pointed ears. On its back are numerous spikes, with smaller spikes on top of its head, similar to tufty fur. Its arms and legs are short, with 3 digits on both its hands and feet. It also has a stubby tail. The dial of the Omnitrix is on the back of its head. Super moves. No super moves. Jetray. Jetray is a red, humanoid manta ray-like alien with green eyes, black outlines on his face, yellow horns extending from his nose, gills underneath his arms, yellow patagia which he uses to fly and glide through the water, and 2 black lightning bolt-like stripes coming down from his shoulders to the Omnitrix dial on his chest. Super moves. No super moves. Atomics. Atomics has a humanoid robotic appearance. He has a green and white body with large cylinders on his arms near his wrists full of green energy with dark green bubble-like spheres that constantly move. He has the same energy on his Omnitrix-shaped chest. His head is a pointed, armored helmet. He is mouthless. Beneath the armor, Atomics has green see-thou skin that shows the pitch-black bones. Atomics wears the Omnitrix symbol on his green and white belt. Super moves. No super moves. Alien X. Alien X is a humanoid alien whose entire body is solid black, excluding his white hands. He has tiny white star-like spots all over his body, giving him the appearance of a starry night sky. His eyes are green and lack pupils, and his forehead bears 3 horn-like protrusions. Super moves. No super moves. To be continued. I hope you enjoyed this story. Also remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.